Billy Bunter's Banknote by Frank Richards. Read by Martin Jarvis.
I say, you fellows!
Harry Wharton and Frank Nugent, in number 1 study in the Greyfriars Remove, glanced round as a fat voice squeaked in the doorway. Billy Bunter, his ample proportions almost filling the doorway from side to side, blinked in through his big spectacles.
I've been looking for you,
said Bunter. Well, now go and look for somebody else, suggested Harry Wharton.
Oh, really, Wharton?
And shut the door after you, said Nugent.
Oh, really, Nugent?
Buzz off, said both the juniors together. And they turned back to the occupation that Billy Bunter's arrival had interrupted. It was tea time. There was a parcel on the study table. It was not a large parcel, but evidently it contained supplies for tea, and Billy Bunter's eyes and spectacles lingered on it covetously. Wharton and Nugent expected Bob Cherry, Johnny Bull, and Hurry Singh to tea, and did not expect Billy Bunter. Neither did they seem happy to see him. Attractive fellow as Bunter knew himself to be, fellows never did seem exhilarated to see him at tea-time. Bunter was too quick a worker to be welcomed at the festive table when supplies were short. Nevertheless, had Bunter rolled in, no doubt he would have been allowed to remain and annex his share, or rather more than his share, of what was going. But to the surprise of the chums of the Remove, Bunter did not roll in.
If you fellows think I've come to tea,
said Bunter. Eh? Haven't you?
No,
roared Bunter.
Think I want any of your measly 2-bob cake?
Oh, my hat! Well, if you haven't come to tea, what have you come for? Asked Frank. Not just to spoil the view, I suppose?
You fellows are for it,
said Bunter impressively.
You're up for a row, and I jolly well know why. I saw you knock Coker's hat off in the quad after class.
Harry Wharton laughed. Coker can come up and see us about it if he likes, he said.
'Tain't Coker. It's the head. He saw you from his window. The head wants to see you in his study at once, and you better pack some exercise books in your bags. He looked waxy.
And with that, William George Bunter revolved on his axis, rolled out of the study doorway, and disappeared up the Remove passage. Harry Wharton and Frank Nugent looked at one another across the table in dismay. Oh, rotten, said Harry. Putrid, agreed Nugent. Blow! What does Coker's silly hat matter, anyhow? It really was hard luck. Knocking off a fifth-form man's hat in the quad was regarded in the Remove merely as a harmless and necessary relaxation. But if Dr. Locke had witnessed that trifling incident from his study window, it had a more serious aspect. I suppose we'd better go, grunted Wharton. Only a jaw, I expect. The old man wouldn't whop for that. And the captain of the Remove form and his chum left the study and went down the passage to the stairs. From the door of number 7 study, further up the passage, a pair of little round eyes and a pair of big round spectacles watched them go. As Wharton and Nugent disappeared across the Remove landing, Billy Bunter rolled out of number 7, grinning from ear to ear. He rolled into number 1 study. Chuckled Bunter, as 2 fat, clutching hands closed on the parcel on the study table. Wharton had already untied the string of the parcel. Bunter proceeded to unwrap it. A cake! Bunter gloated over that cake. He was hungry. He'd had tea in hall to make sure of something to go on with. He was going to have tea with Lord Mauleverer, if Morley couldn't help it, but there was plenty of room for the cake. He blinked round for a knife to cut it, found one in the table drawer, and was about to begin operations when he gave a sudden jump. "Hello, hello, hello," came a cheery roar in the doorway.
"Oh, crikey!"
gasped Bunter. He spun round in alarm. In his keen concentration on the cake, he had not heard Bob Cherry coming. He blinked at a cheery face under a mop of flaxen hair in the doorway. Behind Bob was another Remove fellow, with a dusky, smiling face and a flash of white teeth.
"Beast!"
gasped Bunter.
"Making a fellow jump. I I say, you fellows, I was just coming up the passage to tell you you're wanted in the head study, knocking Coker's hat off.
I didn't knock Coker's hat off. I only kicked it after Wharton had knocked it off, answered Bob cheerily.
Well, I fancy it's that, said Bunter, shaking his head. Anyhow, he sent me up to tell you. Wharton and Nugent have gone already. You'd better cut off.
Oh, blow, said Bob. Come on, Inky. If there's going to be a row about Coker's silly hat, we're all in it. The blowfulness is terrific, said Hari Jamset Ram Singh dismally, and the two juniors trailed off down the passage. Billy Bunter grinned again when they were gone. A large slice was sliced off the cake, and the most active jaws at Greyfriars School opened wide. There was a sound of champing in number 1 study. It was a large slice and a solid slice, but it did not last Bunter long. A fat hand grabbed the knife to cut another, but at that point there was once more an interruption. "You've started, I see," said a sarcastic voice in the doorway. "Where are the fellows?" Billy Bunter whirled round and blinked in great exasperation at Johnny Bull of the Remove. Really, these interruptions were very annoying.
"Oh, they've gone to the head," said Bunter. "You're wanted too, Bull. The head wants the whole lot of you for knocking Coker's hat off. He saw you from his window. He's waiting for you."
Snort from Johnny Bull. "Blow Coker and blow his hat," he said crossly, and he went down the passage with his heavy tread, much to Bunter's relief. Bunter's attention returned to the cake. All the famous 5 were gone to the head study now, and the coast was clear at last. He did not fear any more interruptions. Harry Wharton and co. were not likely to come back yet. Fellows sent for to the head study had to wait if the head was not there, and Bunter was aware that the head was not there, having seen him go out. Once more there was a sound of champing in number 1 study, and a happy fat owl finished the cake to the last crumb and the last plum. "Oh, bother," said Frank Nugent. Having tapped respectfully at the door of the head study and entered that apartment, they naturally expected to find the head there, as he'd sent for them. But the head was not there. "Wait, I suppose," grunted Wharton. "I suppose so," agreed Nugent. And they waited. Tap, tap. The study door opened again, and they looked round as Bob Cherry came in, followed by Hari Jamset Ram Singh. "Hello, hello, hello," exclaimed Bob. "Where's the jolly old beak?" "Goodness knows. We're waiting for him." "A bit cheeky of the old man to keep fellows hanging about at tea-time," remarked Bob. "It can't be long, anyhow, as he told Bunter to send us here," said Harry Wharton. Tap, tap. Johnny Bull came into the study. He stared at the head's empty chair, and then at the waiting juniors. "Bunter said," he began. "Join the queue," said Bob. "Wharton and Nugent were here first, so they're entitled to the first whops when the head blows in. You come last." Johnny Bull chuckled. "I shan't push for a front place," he remarked. Bob Cherry sat on the edge of the head's writing table and swung his long legs. "What the thump is he keeping us waiting like this for? If it's a whopping, a fellow wants to get it over." Bob Cherry broke off suddenly as the study door opened without a tap this time. "Oh, golly!" gasped Bob. He fairly bounded off the writing table. All the juniors spun round towards the door, expecting to see Dr. Locke. But it was not the head who entered. It was a little gentleman with fluffy hair, a pale complexion, a receding chin, and a pair of watery eyes that blinked through rimless pince-nez. "Oh!" gasped Bob again in great relief. "Only Twiss." It was Mr. Twiss, the headmaster's secretary. Mr. Twiss was a newcomer at the school, having entered the head service only that term. Mr. Twiss gave Bob a rather severe glance. Then he looked round the little crowd of juniors, evidently surprised to find them collected in the headmaster's study. "What are you boys doing here?" he exclaimed. "You have no right to enter this study in your headmaster's absence." "We've been sent for by Dr. Locke, Mr. Twiss," explained Harry Wharton. "Dr. Locke is dining with Sir Hilton Popper at Popper Court this evening, and he left the school an hour ago," retorted Mr. Twiss. "What? exclaimed the 5 juniors in startled chorus. Mr. Twiss set the door wide open. "You'd better go," he said dryly. "We were told by a fellow in our form that the head had sent for us," stammered Nugent.
"Dr. Locke certainly did not send for you, and the sooner you go the better," snapped Mr. Twiss.
Harry Wharton and co. looked at one another. Evidently, if the head had gone to dine at Popper Court, he couldn't be expecting to see 5 members of the lower 4th form in his study.
"That fat villain Bunter,"
breathed Bob Cherry. "Pulling our leg," said Johnny Bull with a deep breath.
"Will you please go?" snapped Mr. Twiss impatiently. "Whether you came here to play some disrespectful trick, or whether some foolish boy has deluded you, you have no business here."
He was standing with his hand on the door. The juniors left the study, and Mr. Twiss closed the door after them with a snap. In the corridor, they looked at one another again. "Suspicious little beast," said Bob. "He thinks we were up to something in the big study."
"Oh, bother Twiss,"
grunted Johnny Bull.
"But that fat villain Bunter, what the thump did the fat owl play this idiotic trick for? We might have waited an hour in that study if Twiss hadn't come in."
"If this is Bunter's idea of a joke, it's time he learned not to be so funny," said Harry. "He was in your study when I saw him," said Johnny Bull, "scoffing cake."
"Oh," exclaimed Harry.
He understood at last. While the famous 5 were wasting time in the head study, Bunter was not wasting time in number 1 study in the remove. He was dealing with the cake. "Come on!" roared Bob. 5 wrathful juniors ran for the stairs. They came across the remove landing with a rush. Billy Bunter spun round from the study cupboard in number 1 with a squeak of alarm. Bunter had finished the cake. Not a crumb or a plum remained, not the ghost of a crumb or a plum. But Bunter was not finished in Wharton's study. It stood to reason, Bunter thought, that something more than a cake must have been provided for tea for 5 fellows. So there was Bunter standing at the open study cupboard, blinking into it in search of the something more, as 5 fellows in a bunch burst into the study. It seemed that they had not, after all, waited very long for the head.
"Oh, I say, you fellows."
"Where's that cake, you fat brigand, you podgy pirate?"
No, I say, haven't you been to the head? You'll get into an awful row if you don't wait for him in his study."
"So you knew he wasn't there, you fat fraud?"
"Oh, no. So far as I know, he hasn't gone out in the car, and I never heard him tell the chauffeur to drive to Popper Court."
"Where's that cake?"
What cake?"
asked Bunter.
"No, I never saw a cake."
"You never saw the cake you were bolting when I looked in?" asked Johnny Bull.
No, I wasn't bolting it. I only had a slice, just a teeny-weeny slice, just a taste. If you fellows are going to make a fuss about a fellow having a teeny-weeny slice of cake..."
"We won't make a fuss about a teeny-weeny slice. Where's the rest?"
The rest?"
stammered Bunter. "You fat villain," said Harry Wharton. "You sent us to wait for the head in his study when you knew he'd gone to Popper Court."
"No, I didn't,"
roared Bunter in alarm.
"No, I haven't had the cake."
"Collar him! Scrag him!"
"I say, you fellows..."
Bunter dodged actively round the study table.
I wouldn't make all this fuss about a measly 2-bob cake. It wasn't much of a cake. Hardly any plums in it."
"He never ate it, but he knows there were hardly any plums in it," said Bob. "Cough it up, Bunter."
"We shall never see that cake again without an X-ray outfit," said Bob,
"unless we shake it out of Bunter. What about upending him and shaking it out?" "Good egg! Hear, hear!" 5 pairs of hands grasped Bunter. The fat owl of the remove was swept off his feet. A frantic yell awoke all the echoes of number 1 study and the remove passage outside.
Yeroo! Let go! Beasts! No! You'll make my specs fall off. Well, if they get busted, you'll have to pay for them. Ow! Let go!
The study walls seemed to whirl round Bunter as he blinked dizzily upside down through his spectacles. "Shake it out of him," said Bob.
"Ow! Oh, crumbs! Oh, help! I say..."
spluttered Bunter. "Shake, shake, shake. Is that cake coming?" asked Bob.
"Oh, no! Let go! No, I I say, you fellows, I'll pay for the cake if you like, gurgled Bunter. No, I'm expecting a postal order tomorrow, and I'll pay for the cake. Oh, let go my legs, you beasts.
Shake, shake. It's not coming, said Bob. After all, I don't think I should care much for it now if it did. Ha, ha, ha. They all guffawed.
Let go my legs! Euro!
Bunter's fat legs were suddenly released. The plumpest form at Greyfriars School landed on the floor with a bump that shook the study. Billy Bunter rolled and roared. Then he sat up and made one bound to his feet and another to the doorway. He vanished into the passage. Harry Wharton shut the door after the fleeing owl, and the chums of the Remove sorted a rather sparse tea out of the study cupboard.
How many K's in succeed, Toddy?
Peter Todd of the Remove looked up from his prep and stared across the table at his study mate, William George Bunter. He seemed rather surprised by Bunter's question. Prep was on in the Remove. All the lower fourth were in their studies, hard at work, more or less. In number 7, Billy Bunter, as often happened, was giving Prep a miss, chancing it with Quelch, their form master, in the morning. Often did Billy Bunter adorn the study armchair with his fat person, while Toddy and Dutton did their prep at the table. But on this occasion it was not laziness that had supervened. Bunter was busy, though not with prep.
I'm writing home, Toddy, and I want to be particularly careful about the spelling in this letter. The pater wasn't awfully pleased with my last report.
Must be hard to please, remarked Toddy with a deep sarcasm that was wholly and entirely lost on Bunter.
Well, Quelch wasn't very nice about it, said Bunter. He actually used the word lazy.
Lazy? Now, what could have put that into Quelch's head? Asked Peter, still sarcastic, and still wasting his sarcasm.
He's prejudiced. Why, he even said untruthful. Me, you know. Me. That's the sort of justice we get here.
Oh, crumbs, said Toddy.
So, I want to make this letter jolly good just to impress the pater. You can't be too careful when you're writing home for money, can you? I've forgotten, just for the moment, how many K's there are in succeed. Are there 1 or 2, Toddy?
I shouldn't put any as a matter of choice, Peter Todd answered.
Oh, that's rot, said Bunter. I know there's 1, at least. Yeah, I think I'll put 1K and chance it. No, I'm pretty certain that's right. And you jolly well needn't cackle, Peter Todd. You can't spell for toffee.
Peter did cackle as he resumed prep. Billy Bunter wrinkled his fat brows over that letter home. The fat owl had finished his letter by the time his study mates had finished prep. He read it through and seemed satisfied.
Yeah, that letter's all right, said Bunter decidedly. You needn't tell me anything about spelling, Toddy, but I'll tell you what you can do. You can lend me a stamp.
Peter, gurgling, produced a stamp, and Billy Bunter rolled out of the study with his letter. Johnny Bull shook his head. No, he said. Now, look here, Johnny, said Bob Cherry. We're late, remarked Harry Wharton. Jolly late, said Frank Nugent. We don't want to get into a row with Quelch for cutting roll call. Johnny Bull, standing stolid and solid, shook his head again. Johnny was a fellow of firm opinion. He had indeed the firmness of a rock, which on occasion seemed to his comrades rather the obstinacy of a mule. The famous 5 were out of gates, and they were late. They'd walked over to Highcliffe School to tea with their friends Courtney and the Caterpillar. They'd intended to walk back in good time for call-over at their own school. But they'd talked cricket, and the time had passed somehow, and it was a long walk back across Courtfield Common. So there they were, with only a matter of minutes before the bell rang at Greyfriars for roll. And if they were going to get in before old Gosling shut the gate, it was clear they had to find a shorter route than that by the road. Such a route was available, but it meant going out of bounds. By the side of the lane was a high wooden fence enclosing the grounds of the Three Fishers, a riverside inn. A short cut across those grounds would take them to the towpath by the River Sark, and a quick and easy run to the school. But the Three Fishers was a place with a somewhat disreputable reputation, the haunt of racing men, and it was most strictly and severely out of bounds for all Greyfriars fellows. It was a short cut home, or lines for cutting roll, and 4 members of the Co. were in favour of the short cut. Johnny Bull was not. "You fellows can talk till you're black in the face," said Johnny. "Better be late than walked into the head as pub crawlers." "Well, put it to the vote," said Bob Cherry. "Hands up for the short cut." 4 hands went up. Johnny Bull's remained stuck in his pockets. "You're outvoted, Johnny," said Frank Nugent. "I tell you," grunted Johnny. "Come on, you men!" And Bob Cherry settled the matter by making a jump at the fence and catching the top. "I tell you," hooted Johnny Bull. "Follow your leader," said Harry, and he clambered over the fence after Bob, and Frank and the nabob of Bunnypur followed. Johnny Bull gave an expressive grunt, but he took his hands out of his pockets and followed his friends. 5 active juniors dropped on the inner side of the fence into the weedy and unkempt grounds of the Riverside Inn. In the distance they could see the red-tiled old inn, with a tree-shaded path leading down to the gate on the towpath. "Put it on," said Bob. "Race you to the gate." They sprinted for the distant gate as if they were on the cinder path. Bob Cherry, in the lead, hurtled out of the open gateway rather like a thunderbolt, just as a man turned into it from the towpath. Crash! It was a terrific collision. Neither saw the other till they crashed. The man turned in just as Bob careered out, and a collision simply couldn't be avoided. "Oh, gasped Bob. He staggered from the shock and sat down suddenly and hard. But the man into whom he'd crashed had fared worse. He was a small, slight man, and the shock hurled him over backwards, sprawling on his back on the greasy towpath. He lay there, winded, gasping for breath. "Oh, my hat!" cried Harry Wharton. "Oh, Bob's done it now," murmured Johnny Bull. "I told you." "Oh, I say," breathed Bob. He staggered to his feet. "I say, oh, good Lord, it's Twiss." "Twiss?" breathed Nugent. The famous 5 stared at the sprawling man in dismay, almost in horror. It was little Mr. Twiss, the head's new secretary. It did not occur to them for the moment that it was an odd circumstance that the head secretary had been coming in at the gate of that disreputable inn. Harry Wharton ran forward to give Mr. Twiss a hand to help him to rise. Nugent and Johnny Bull lent Wharton a hand in helping Mr. Twiss up. Bob Cherry, not yet recovered from the shock, leaned on the gate-post and spluttered for breath. Mr. Twiss was helped to his feet. He stood unsteadily, supported by the anxious juniors. "Oh, awfully sorry, sir," gasped Bob. Gurgled Mr. Twiss. "What? Who? You rushed into me. I'm breathless. Oh, we didn't see you, sir," said Nugent. "We hope you're not hurt, sir," said Harry. Well, certainly I'm hurt. I had a very painful shock." He set the pince-nez straight on his nose and stared, or rather glared, at the 5 dismayed juniors. Wharton, Cherry, Nugent, Bull, Hurry Singh, you've been out of bounds. Out of bounds? I shall report this to your foremaster." Oh. "We were only taking a short cut, sir." "Nonsense. I shall certainly report you to Mr. Quelch. I'm surprised. I'm shocked, disgusted." Mr. Twiss jerked himself away from supporting hands. Evidently he was in a very bad temper. Still panting for breath, he turned his back on them and walked on up the towpath. Harry Wharton and Co. looked at one another. "I told you so," remarked Johnny Bull. "I said, oh, never mind what you said, as long as you don't say any more. Come on, no good being late for roll call after all," said Bob. "I told you," but the chums of the Remove did not stay to listen to what Johnny had told them. They raced along the towpath towards the school, and Johnny, grunting, raced after them. The famous 5 were not in a happy mood. They'd scraped in just in time for roll, so that was all right. But as soon as Twist came in from his walk, they expected to be called in by their form master. It was now nearly time for prep, but the call had not yet come. They didn't want the thing hanging over their heads like the sword of Damocles till after prep. "Well, Twist must be in by this time, surely," murmured Bob Cherry. "Bother him," said Harry. "We want to get it over." "Mightn't be going to report it after all," said Bob, hopefully. "After all, it's no business of his. The head secretary isn't a beak. It doesn't concern him." "Ah, that's rot," said Johnny Bull. "He's bound to report fellows he spots pub-crawling, and that's what he thinks." "Bound to come," said Nugent, with a nod. "We shouldn't have taken that short cut," said Johnny Bull. "I told you so at the time." "Then don't tell us any more," suggested Bob. "I say, what's the row, you men?" Herbert Vernon Smith joined the famous five, who were standing in a group by the window in the rag. "Oh, nothing, really," answered Harry Wharton. "We were late and took a short cut across the Three Fishers' grounds and ran into Twiss on the towpath and—" He broke off as the bounder winked. "Did you tell Twiss you were taking a short cut?" asked Smithy. "Yes," growled Wharton. "Oh, did he believe it?" The captain of the remove made no reply to that. "If you don't believe it, Smithy, say so," said Bob Cherry quietly. "If you think we go pub-crawling like you do, put it plain, and I'll push your nose through the back of your head." "Oh, thanks," said the bounder imperturbably. "My nose will do very well where it is. You're sure that Twist saw you coming out?" "Oh, not much doubt about that, as Bob crashed into him in the gateway," said Nugent. "He was strewn over the towpath." "Oh, gum. Well, that tears it, then. You must have been a clumsy ass to crash into him." "How could I help it?" retorted Bob. "We were putting on speed, of course, and Twist turned in at the gate just as I was bolting out." "He turned in at the gate?" repeated Smithy, staring. "Yes, or it wouldn't have happened." "What on earth was Twist doing, going into a den like the Three Fishers? You're dreaming." "Well, it's rather queer, come to think of it," said Harry, "but that's what happened. Twist was going in as we were coming out." "Well, if that's true, you needn't worry about Twist reporting you to Quelch." "Why not?" asked Nugent. "Well, look at it," said Vernon Smith. "Headmaster's secretaries aren't supposed to drop in at pubs like the Three Fishers. If Twist really was going in, he won't want to advertise it. If you've got it right, he won't say a word to Quelch." "Oh, rot," said Harry Wharton uneasily. "Bosh," said Bob. The bounder laughed and strolled away. A few minutes later the bell rang, and the juniors went up to their studies for prep. Harry Wharton and co. sighted Mr. Quelch in the distance as they went up, but the remove master did not glance at them. Evidently the sword of Damocles was to remain suspended over their heads.
"I say, you fellows, is there one for me?"
It was morning break, and some of the remove had gathered round the rack to look for letters. Among them was William George Bunter, blinking anxiously through his big spectacles. "Expecting a postal order, old fat man?" asked Bob Cherry.
"Well, the fact is, I'm expecting a remittance from home," said Bunter. "I wrote specially to the pater a few days ago, and it's time he answered. He's making lots and lots of money on the stock exchange, and it might be a fiver, or a tenner, perhaps."
Billy Bunter blinked at the rack. "Nothing for you, old fat bean," said Harry Wharton, glancing at the letters. Grunt from Bunter.
"Well, that's pretty rotten. Fell lot of good a fellow taking all the trouble to write home and taking a lot of trouble with his spelling and all that. I might as well have saved my stamp."
"Whose stamp?" asked Peter Todd. "Coming out, you men?" asked Bob, and Harry Wharton and co. went out into the quad.
"Wharton?"
"Oh, yes, sir?" Mr. Twist came up to the famous five in the quad and addressed the captain of the remove. They capped the head secretary respectfully and a little uneasily. So far they'd heard nothing from Mr. Quelch on the subject of that unlucky shortcut at the Three Fishers. With the cheery optimism of youth, they were rather forgetting the sword of Damocles that was still suspended over their heads, till they were reminded of it by Mr. Twist. Mr. Twist blinked from face to face through his rimless pince-nez.
"I have not yet spoken to your form master, Wharton," said Mr. Twist. I've been considering the matter. I was very much surprised and very much shocked to see you coming out of such a place as the Three Fishers when I was passing on the towpath yesterday."
Harry Wharton and Co. made no reply to that. Mr. Twiss had not been passing on the towpath. He'd been turning into the gateway, or the collision would never have happened, but they did not want to argue the point.
"You told me that you'd been merely taking a short-cut,"
went on Mr. Twiss, his eyes very sharp behind his pince-nez as he watched the juniors' faces. "That was true, sir," said Harry. "We should have been late for roll call if we hadn't."
"Any boy seen in such a place might make the same explanation, true or false."
"Oh, yes, I know that, sir, of course, but it happens to be true."
Well, I believe you," said Mr. Twiss. "I was very much startled and shocked at the time, but now that I've thought over the matter, I believe you. I do not think it necessary to trouble Mr. Quelch in the circumstances."
"Oh, thank you, sir," said 4 voices in chorus. Johnny Bull was silent. Mr. Twiss gave the juniors a nod and walked away. "Well, much obliged to Twissy," said Bob. "You might have thanked him too, Johnny. Or did you want a report to Quelch and a detention or a whopping?" Grunt from Johnny Bull. "I'll keep my thanks till I've something to thank him for," he answered. "Twiss hasn't let us off on his own account. He's got his reasons." "His reasons are plain enough," said Harry Wharton a little sharply. "He believes what we've just told him." "He didn't believe it at the time."
"Well, he's thought it over since," said Bob.
"Oh, yes, he's thought it over," assented Johnny sarcastically. "He's just said that he was passing the Three Fishers when you cannoned into him. Well, was he?"
"Oh, rot," said Bob uneasily.
"He was coming in at the gate," said Johnny. "You walloped into him face to face, didn't you?"
"Well, yes, but—"
"And it would have come out if he'd taken us to Quelch, and you can bet that Quelch would have wondered. No, Smithy was right."
"Well, the Three Fishers isn't out of bounds for headmaster's secretaries," said Bob, with a grin. "They can trickle in there if they like. Only he wouldn't want the Beaks to know that he liked. Twiss ought to have reported us to Quelch. It was his duty, and he ought to have done it. And if he hasn't, it's for his own reasons, not for ours."
"Well, I'm glad he's not such a stickler for duty as you think he ought to be," chuckled Bob. "Now then, it's just time for ginger pop before the bell goes for class. So let's cut along to the tuck shop." The famous 5 went to the school shop to discuss ginger pop, much more to their taste than Mr. Twiss, and Johnny Bull's ideas on the subject of Mr. Twiss.
"Smithy, old chap."
Herbert Vernon Smith gave a jump. 11 strokes had boomed out from the old Greyfriars clock tower, and as the last stroke of 11 died away, the bounder of Greyfriars slipped quietly from his bed and began to get his clothes on. A low, whispering voice from the next bed had startled him.
"Ready, you ass,"
he breathed. Tom Redwing sat up in bed.
"You're breaking out?"
"Oh, no," said the bounder sarcastically. "I've got up and dressed myself to take a stroll in the corridor." He laughed softly. "I've got to see a man about a horse. Go to sleep." Tom Redwing peered at him in the gloom. He was anxious, but almost as angry as anxious. Removed fellows wondered sometimes at the friendship between the quiet, steady Redwing and the wild and reckless bounder. But that ill-assorted friendship was very deep and real, and it was the reason why Tom was awake that night when his chum was about to creep softly from the sleeping dormitory.
"Look here, Smithy, you might have a little sense," snapped Redwing. "Quelch has had his eye on you all this term."
"Dear old Quelch," murmured the bounder. "Fast asleep now, Reddy, and not dreaming of me."
"For goodness sake, Smithy, don't be a fool. It's too risky," urged Redwing earnestly. "You know what it means, breaking out at night. You'd be sacked like a shot if they spot you."
"Speech may be taken as read," yawned the bounder. "Hello," came a drowsy voice. Bob Cherry lifted his head from the pillow and stared round. "I say, is that you, Smithy?" "Find out," snapped the bounder. Now, look here, Smithy," urged Redwing.
"Oh, wake up the whole dorm,"
snarled Vernon Smith. "I'll leave you to it." And he slipped away to the door. "That goat Smithy," said Bob. "He'll run into a beak or a prefect one of these times, and serve him jolly well right." Vernon Smith did not hear him. The bounder was gone. Smithy had his good qualities. There was more good than bad in him, but he had a love of excitement, of the thrill of danger for its own sake, that seemed to make it impossible for him to toe the line, as other fellows did. He was quite cool as he crept away silently down the dark corridor and crossed the wide landing to the staircase. After all, it was easy for a fellow with plenty of nerve, and Smithy had never lacked nerve. The whole house was buried in silence and slumber. He'd be back in an hour or so, and nobody the wiser. He'd done it before, and it was easy to do it again. There was no glimmer of light. All was black darkness. Stealthily, silently but swiftly, he went down the stairs, step after step, his hand gliding down the polished oak banister. And then, suddenly, it happened. That anyone could be ahead of him on the staircase would have seemed impossible to Smithy, had he even thought of it, in the darkness. A master would, of course, have turned on the staircase light. He gave a gasp of utter amazement and alarm as he suddenly bumped into an unseen figure in the darkness. Someone, unseen, unsuspected, was in front of him, going down the staircase silently in the dark, close to the banister. Smithy, moving more swiftly, had overtaken him, and inevitably bumped into him. "Ah!" gasped the bounder. His gasp was echoed by a startled exclamation. What? A hand in the darkness swept round, grasping at the junior. Smithy did not recognize the husky, startled voice, but he knew that it was a man's voice, not a boy's. It must be a master, and he had fairly walked into that master's hands. He gave a desperate wrench as he was grasped, with a wild hope of yet escaping unrecognized, lost his footing and slipped on the stairs. The unseen man, evidently as wildly startled as Smithy himself, stumbled over him, and they sprawled on the stairs together. And as they sprawled and rolled and bumped and panted, a light suddenly flashed on above, and Mr. Quelch, his lean figure encased in a dressing gown, stared down blankly from the landing at the two sprawling figures.
"Vernon Smith!"
"Oh!" breathed the bounder. He dragged himself loose from the unseen man who sprawled with him and scrambled up just as the landing light flashed on. That light gleamed full on his face as he stared up at the figure on the landing and met the gimlet eyes of his form master.
"Vernon Smith,"
repeated Mr. Quelch with compressed lips. His face was very grim as he stared down at the bounder. A single glance took in every detail, noting that the junior was fully dressed. Quelch did not need telling that Smithy had been going out of the house. The bounder's long run of luck had failed him at last. He was fairly caught breaking out at night. He realized it as he looked up at Mr. Quelch, and his heart sank. For a long moment Mr. Quelch stared at the bounder, his face so grim that it might have been that of the fabled Gorgon. Then his glance shifted to the figure that was still sprawling breathlessly, panting and gasping and gurgling on the stairs.
"Is that Mr. Twiss?"
exclaimed the remove master. "Twiss," muttered Smithy, and he stared round at the man with whom he'd collided in the dark, revealed now in the light. He gritted his teeth. It was Twiss. What had that little ass been doing, stealing about like a ghost in the dark? Mr. Twiss sat up dizzily. He was winded, startled almost out of his wits, spluttering for breath. He blinked up at Mr. Quelch. His rimless pince-nez slanted on his nose. His fluffy hair was wildly ruffled, standing almost on end, and his usually pallid face was crimson. Gurgled Mr. Twiss. He made an effort to rise and dragged himself up with the aid of the banisters.
"What has happened, Mr. Twiss?"
asked the remove master.
"Did you find this junior going out?"
"Oh, I hardly know, panted Mr. Twist. I was descending the stairs. I could not sleep, and I was going down for a book I left in the common room, and all of a sudden I felt somebody behind me. I was so startled. Oh.
Mr. Quelch eyed the little man, crimson and breathless and confused, hanging weakly onto the banister, and his lip curled ever so little. It was pretty evident that Twiss had not only been startled, but frightened. Holding on to the banisters with one hand, Twiss set his glasses straight with the other, and peered at Vernon Smith.
"Surely this boy should not be out of his dormitory at this hour of the night, Mr. Quelch?"
"Most assuredly he should not, sir,"
answered Mr. Quelch.
"I trust, sir, that you are not hurt."
"Well, I think I stumbled over the boy. I fell down several stairs," mumbled Mr. Twist. I do not feel quite myself. I think I will return to my room."
Mr. Twist came up the stairs unsteadily, his hand on the banister. Vernon Smith followed him up, his face set. The bounder had recovered from the shock now, though he was still feeling shaken. But little Mr. Twist seemed to be nothing but a bundle of nerves. Smithy wondered savagely whether the little ass had supposed that it was a burglar behind him in the dark. The bounder was for it, he knew that, but he had the courage of his delinquencies, and he was cool and collected now, ready to face what was coming to him. He felt only a savage scorn for the frightened, confused, stammering little secretary. Mr. Twist, still gasping, was going to his room, which opened onto the landing. The door closed on him, and his gasps. Left alone with that delinquent of his form, Mr. Quelch fixed his gimlet eyes on the bounder, gleaming like cold steel.
"Vernon Smith."
"Yes, sir," muttered the bounder.
"Have you been out of the house?"
"No, sir."
"You were going out?"
Vernon Smith made no reply to that. The bounder was far from particular about the truth when he was dealing with beaks or prefects, but it was obviously futile to deny what was perfectly clear.
"Very well," said Mr. Quelch. "You will be taken before your headmaster in the morning, and Dr. Locke will deal with you."
The bounder, with all his nerve, paled a little.
"I say, you fellows!"
Billy Bunter rolled up to the famous 5 in the quad with a cheery excitement in his fat face. There were a good many serious faces in the Greyfriars Remove that morning. Even fellows who did not like Smithy were rather concerned about him. Tom Redwing was with the co, his face dark with a distress he could not conceal. Billy Bunter blinked at the troubled group of juniors quite cheerily.
"I say, Smithy's for it," said Bunter. "Quelch took him to the head when we came out after prayers."
"We know that, fathead."
"I say, 'tain't often that a fellow gets expelled, is it?" said Bunter. "I say, think Smithy'll be bunked, Redwing?"
Redwing winced, but made no reply.
"Oh, shut up, you fat ass," said Bob. "Smithy won't be bunked. He wasn't out of the house when they nailed him."
"Oh, that wouldn't make much difference," said Bunter, shaking his head. "They'd jolly well know he was going out on the razzle-dazzle. It's the sack, all right. You can take my word for that. What do you think, Wharton?"
"I think you're a fat ass," answered the captain of the Remove.
"Beast! Of course, I'm sorry for Smithy," said Bunter. "He's asked it, of course, and it serves him jolly well right. Still, I'm sorry for him. You fellows may not be, but I've got a sympathetic nature, I hope."
"Turn round, Bunter," said Bob.
"Eh? What do you want me to turn round for?"
"I'm going to kick you." Billy Bunter turned round, but he did not wait to be kicked. He departed to bestow the delights of his conversation on more appreciative fellows. Harry Wharton and co. were left to their rather glum meditations. "Brace up, ready?" murmured Bob Cherry uncomfortably. "You can't bunk a man for what he was going to do if he never did it." Redwing nodded, without speaking, but nobody, not even Bob himself, was convinced.
"Hello, hello, hello,"
cried Bob Cherry. "Here's Smithy." All eyes were turned on the bounder as he came out of the house. He came with his hands in his pockets, his face cool and unconcerned. There was always a touch of swagger about the scapegrace of Greyfriars, and it was more pronounced now, as he strolled into the sunny quad. "What's the verdict, Smithy?" called out Skinner. "Sacked." Smithy glanced round at him, but did not trouble to reply. "Smithy, old man," Tom Redwing came up breathlessly. "For goodness sake, tell me." The bounder's hard face softened a little. "You're not losing me this time, Reddy." "Not sacked?" asked Johnny Bull. "Sorry to disappoint you, Bull. No." "Oh, don't be an ass," said Johnny. "I'm glad you've got off, and if you've got any sense at all, you'll let it be a warning to you." "Speech may be taken as read," said Smithy. "We're all glad, Smithy," said Harry Wharton quietly. "Glad I'm up for a beak's flogging?" asked Smithy. "Thanks." "A flogging?" repeated Redwing. His face fell. "Well, you couldn't expect much less, Smithy." You might have been turfed out," said Bob. "You would have been if you'd been caught outside the house instead of inside." "That's exactly what the old man said," drawled Vernon Smith. "As it is, I'm let off with a flogging." He set his lips. "I wouldn't care, but it's going to be a public execution. You fellows can expect an entertainment after third school." With all his assumption of cool indifference, it was clear that Smithy was feeling this deeply. Not so much the flogging itself, for he was hard as nails, but the disgrace of the infliction in the crowded hall under the staring eyes of all Greyfriars. But it was only for a moment that his feelings were revealed. The next, he laughed lightly. "Well, I've done the same thing a dozen times or more," he drawled. "And then I get dished because a silly little ass goes mooning down in the middle of the night for a silly book. I'd like to punch that man Twiss's silly rabbit face. Why couldn't he switch on the light like a sensible man?" "Queer that he didn't," remarked Bob. "I wish now I'd tipped him down the staircase, blow him," said Vernon Smith contemptuously. And he walked away with Redwing. It was over. The last sounding swish of the birch had died away through the silent hall. From Herbert Vernon Smith, not a sound had come. The hall was packed. Every fellow of every form was there. The head had felt it his duty to make a public example of Vernon Smith. Smithy prided himself on carrying on in reckless defiance of authority, on being a law unto himself, and now he'd come up against the inevitable result, and come up against it hard. The headmaster of Greyfriars had his duty to do, and he did it. But it was over at last. Gosling set Smithy down, and he stood a little unsteadily, his face pale. Not a sound had escaped him. The bounder was tough all through, hard as hickory, and he would have disdained to allow a single cry to leave his lips. But very few fellows could have gone through that castigation in silence. It was over, and the school dismissed. In silence they crowded out of the hall. Tom Redwing slipped his arm through Smithy's and led him away in silence, and the door of number 4 study in the remove closed on them. Smithy leant on the study table, breathing in gasps. He'd succeeded in keeping up an aspect of iron endurance and indifference while many eyes were upon him, but it had fallen from him now, like a cloak. Tom Redwing stood silent in miserable distress. Every mutter of pain from his chum went to his heart, and he was uneasy too, and a little alarmed at the evil gleam in the bounder's eyes. The bounder stirred at last, lifting a pale, bitter face, and looking at Redwing across the table. "You think I asked for this?" he muttered savagely. "Well, old chap," said Tom. He paused. All Greyfriars knew that Vernon Smith had asked for what he'd received, and more, that he deserved it, and that it might have been worse for him. But it was not a tactful moment for saying so. "Well, if I asked for it, I've had it," said Vernon Smith between his teeth, "and others may get what they've asked for, too." His eyes burned. "Smithy, old man—" "Don't Smithy, old man, me! That little beast Twiss!
He's got me this. And the head, too.
Redwing started in real alarm. "Smithy, are you mad? What do you mean?"
Never mind what I mean, sneered the bounder. You'd better not know.
No good asking you to join up in a rag on the big beak study.
"I should jolly well say not," exclaimed Redwing, aghast. "For goodness sake, Smithy, do you want to be sacked after all?"
"Oh, I shall be jolly careful," jeered Smithy. "That moon-faced rabbit Twist won't be wandering about in the dark next time."
"They'll think of you first thing," urged Redwing. "You were flogged this morning, and something happens in the head study the next night. They've only got to put two and two together."
"Oh, I'm not sure of that. A chap who's just had a flogging wouldn't be expected to risk another just afterwards. But what's the odds if they can't prove anything?" The bounder laughed scoffingly. "It's as safe as houses, and you know it. You want to stop me because you don't like the idea."
"It's rotten, Smithy. When you're cooler, you'll see that as plainly as I do. The head's a good man, and a just man. You had it hard, I know, but if you will kick over the traces, what do you expect?"
"Is this a lecture or a sermon?"
Tom Redwing bit his lip. "It's a rotten game to rag the head study. Rotten and disrespectful and caddish," he broke out hotly.
"You don't feel like turning out tonight to keep KV in the passage while I'm in the beak study?"
grinned Smithy. "You know that I couldn't have a hand in anything of the kind."
"Of course not." "Well, I don't want any help."
"It's mad," said Tom.
"I tell you, I shan't be more than 10 minutes in the beak study," said the bounder coolly. "But you can bet your Sunday hat that it will be a sight for gods and men and little fishes when I'm through with it."
Redwing sat silent. Smithy was seething with angry and passionate resentment, and not to be reasoned with. Herbert Vernon Smith made no sound as he slipped from his bed in the dark. It was midnight, and at that hour the most belated beak had gone to bed. There was a faint stirring, and then he knew that Redwing was awake. The bounder guessed that his chum's eyes were on him in the gloom. He did not heed. Silently, in his socks, he crept away to the door, and even the wakeful Redwing, listening, did not hear a sound as the door opened and closed again. All was dark, but Smithy knew every inch of the way. Silently he crept down the passage, across the landing. Doubly cautiously he crept down the stairs, taking his time, listening intently. He stood at length in the corridor on which the headmaster's study opened. His heart beat a little faster as he stopped at the door. His hand was steady as he groped for the door handle in the blackness. To his surprise, the door moved under his hand. It was ajar. He pushed it open without a sound. He stepped in, his feet noiseless on the soft carpet. The next moment he stood transfixed, his heart giving a great bound. A startled gasp escaped him involuntarily, unconsciously. The study was dark, the blinds drawn, shutting out the glimmer of the stars. But across the wide room, on the further side of the head's writing table, was a twinkle of light. It was the gleam of a torch. Only for a split second was it visible. It was shut off instantly. Whoever held that light had heard him. He heard a panting breath in the darkness. He was wildly startled, but the other, unseen, was as startled as he. Vernon Smith's heart thumped. He was not alone in the room. Who was there? Who could be there in the dark at midnight with only the glimmer of a tiny torch to light him? There was a panting breath, a hurried rustle, the rustle of papers. Vernon Smith heard the scrape of a chair as someone, moving hurriedly, knocked against it in the dark. Someone was at the head's desk, a panting, startled man. And he knew what that man was, what he could only be: a thief in the night. As the bounder heard the unseen man moving, He realized his peril and backed swiftly to the doorway. Almost at the same moment, an unseen figure rushing across the room to the door crashed into him, knocking him backwards. He staggered, throwing out his hands, catching as he fell at the invisible figure that had crashed into him, hardly knowing what he did. His right hand closed on an arm and held. A clenched fist lashed from the darkness, crashing into the bounder's face with stunning force, and he spun over with a cry and thudded to the floor. He heard, as his senses swam, the patter of running feet in the dark corridor, but he heard and knew no more. There was a low moan and silence, and the bounder of Greyfriars, crumpled, inert, lay in the darkness just within the doorway, stunned and senseless. Harry Wharton awoke. Somebody was moving in the dormitory. He lifted his head from the pillow and looked around. Faintly from the night came the sound of a chime. It was 12:30. He stared towards the door. In the glimmering moonlight he saw that it was wide open, and he made out a figure in pyjamas, standing with his back to the room, looking out into the passage. "Who's that?" he called out softly. The half-seen junior at the door gave a sudden start and spun round towards him. Then Wharton saw his face in the moon glimmer and recognized Tom Redwing. Harry Wharton could read the trouble and anxiety in Redwing's face, and he did not need telling that it was something to do with Smithy. He turned his glance towards Vernon Smith's bed, and now that he looked at it, he could see that it was unoccupied. Quietly, he slipped from his own bed and joined Redwing at the doorway. "What's up, Reddy?" he asked in a low whisper. "Smithy breaking out again?" No, it's not that. It's a rag." "A rag?" repeated Harry. "Smithy was wild. You know him," muttered Redwing. "He was going to ship the head study." "Oh, the mad ass!" breathed Wharton. I know. But he said he'd be 10 minutes. That was enough. But why doesn't he come back? He's been gone half an hour." Wharton shook his head. He was as perplexed as the bounder's chum. "Well, something must have happened to him," muttered Redwing. "Well, what could have happened? I don't know. But I'm going down to look for him. He wouldn't be staying all this time if he could help it." Harry Wharton nodded. "I can't make it out any more than you can, Reddy, but it's jolly queer. I'll come down with you if you're going." As quietly as the bounder half an hour before them, they crept down the stairs to the study landing below. But there was no sound from the gloom. The bounder was not coming. "He must be still in the head study," whispered Wharton. A minute more, and they were in the corridor outside the door of the headmaster's study. There was no sound from within. If the bounder was there, he was silent. Redwing groped for the door, and his hand met open space. "The door's open," he breathed. "Then he must be here." "Smithy," whispered Redwing. He peered into the dark interior of the room. There was no answer from the blackness. Then, as they listened with anxious intentness, a strange sound came, low and faint, a low, barely audible moan. Harry Wharton caught Redwing's arm. "Did you hear?" "Smithy," panted Redwing. He ran into the study, stumbled over something that lay in the darkness, and almost fell. A startled cry broke from him. "What is it?" gasped Harry Wharton. "Get a light, quick. It's Smithy. It must be Smithy, lying here. Switch on the light, quick." Redwing was groping at the unseen form over which he'd stumbled. Wharton found the switch inside the doorway and flashed on the light. He stared at the scene in the study. Redwing on his knees beside the still form stretched on the carpet. The bounder, his face upturned, colourless, with a great black bruise on the forehead. "He's hurt," groaned Redwing. "Smithy, old man." Wharton could only stare, stupefied. The bounder lay unconscious under the eyes of the two horrified juniors. But he was coming to. The moan they had heard was the first sign of returning consciousness. And as Redwing lifted the sagging head and rested it against his knee, Vernon Smith's eyes opened. "Ready," he muttered. "I'm here, Smithy, old fellow. You're hurt."
"Yes, I had a knock."
The bounder lay with his aching head resting on Redwing's knee, without stirring. But he was recovering a little. A faint flush of colour came back into his white face. His voice came again, faint but stronger than before.
"He's gone."
"He? Who?"
"The man who knocked me out."
"There's nobody here, Smithy."
I know. I thought I heard him running as I went down." "Stick to me. Ready? You go and call Quelch, Wharton."
Wharton stared.
"Smithy?
Here?
At this time of night? This can't be kept dark now. The head's been robbed."
"What?"
"Yes, the thief was here. He knocked me out and ran. He was at the head's desk."
Harry Wharton crossed the study to the headmaster's writing table and looked round it. The table had a column of drawers on either side, and Wharton started and caught his breath as he saw that one of them was pulled open, a rough gash in the wood showing that the lock had been forced. "I'll call Quelch," said Harry quietly. He hurried from the study. A couple of minutes later, Mr. Quelch, roused from sleep, was listening with a startled face to what he had to tell. The next morning, the famous five were discussing the events of the previous night.
"Well, I suppose it'll be all over the school soon," remarked Bob Cherry. "It can't be kept dark about burgling the head study. It's a matter for the police."
"Yes, I believe Quelch phoned Inspector Grimes at Courtfield after he sent us back to the dorm last night," said Harry.
Hello. Here's Smithy. By gum, that sportsman last night must have given him a whale of a jolt," said Bob.
Many eyes that morning had turned on the bounder's disfigured face. He had a heavy black and bluish bruise on his forehead. The bounder's expression was far from pleasant as he came up to the famous five, and his eyes glinted as the juniors involuntarily glanced at his disfigured forehead.
"Looks pretty, doesn't it?"
he sneered.
"It must have been a bit of a shock," said Bob.
"Yes, it was a bit of a knock," said Vernon Smith between his teeth.
"I'd like to meet the man who handed it out. I'd give him something back. I came to tell you that you're wanted, Wharton, you and I and Redwing. Grimey wants to hear anything we can tell him."
"Is Grimes here, then?" asked Nugent.
"Yes, in the head study. I believe he's been making investigations."
The bounder sneered again.
"Fat lot of good. Come on, Wharton."
Dr. Locke was seated at his writing table. His glance turned on the three juniors as they followed the remove master into the study, and he frowned a little as he looked at the bounder. A robbery had taken place, an unheard-of occurrence in Dr. Locke's placid existence. He had greeted Inspector Grimes of Courtfield with his usual urbane courtesy, but he would almost as soon have seen a grisly spectre in his study. The three juniors stood quietly before their headmaster. There was a stocky figure standing by the study window, Inspector Grimes of Courtfield, plump and red-faced.
"You know why I have sent for you, my boys," said the head. "Your form master, Mr. Quelch, has told me all the circumstances, but I desire to hear what you have to say, and Mr. Grimes may have some questions to put to you. It appears that you, Wharton, and Redwing came down in the night to look for Vernon Smith."
"Yes, sir," said Harry.
"I understand, but I do not understand, Vernon Smith, why you came down to this study in the first place. You left your dormitory at midnight and came to this study. Why?"
The headmaster's voice grew sterner as he put that question.
"I'm sorry, sir,"
said the bounder meekly. Smithy could be meek when he liked.
"It was a lark, sir. I was going to put some gum in your ink pot, sir."
"Oh, bless my soul," exclaimed the head blankly. "It was your intention, Vernon Smith, to play a foolish, unthinking prank in your headmaster's study? A prank of which a small boy in the second form might be ashamed."
"I'm very sorry, sir.
I know it was silly, sir, and I never did it, sir, as it happened. I was knocked out as soon as I got into the room.
Smithy passed a hand over the black bruise on his forehead, just to remind the head that he'd been injured. There was a pause.
"Vernon Smith,"
said the head at last.
"But for the consequences of your act, I should request your form master to administer a severe punishment for such a foolish, disrespectful prank. In view of the injury you received, I shall not do so."
"Thank you, sir," murmured the bounder.
"No doubt what has occurred will be a warning to you, Vernon Smith,"
said Dr. Locke.
"Oh, yes, sir."
Dr. Locke glanced across at Mr. Grimes.
"Inspector, if you desire to question the boys?"
"Oh, certainly, sir."
Mr. Grimes stepped from the window.
"I should like to hear from you, Master Vernon Smith, exactly what occurred. At what time, precisely, did you leave your dormitory?"
"Midnight had just struck, sir."
"You came down in the dark?"
"Yes, sir. I had no idea that anyone was here, of course, till I saw the light of a torch as I came into the room."
"You did not see the man who held the torch?"
"No. It was put out instantly."
"What happened then?"
I realized that it must be a burglar, and back to the door. He must have rushed for the door at the same time, for he rushed into me, and I caught at him as I was knocked over. Then he gave me this." The bounder touched the bruise on his forehead.
"You were stunned?"
"I must have been. I don't know anything afterwards, until Wharton and Redwing found me here. But I heard him running as I fell, I'm sure of that. He ran down the corridor."
"I see. Now, Master Redwing, it appears that you came down to look for your friend, as he did not return to the dormitory. At what time was this?"
"Some minutes after 12:30.
"Then Master Vernon Smith must have lain here unconscious for at least half an hour. Did you see or hear anything unusual as you came down?"
"Nothing at all, sir."
"Or you, Master Wharton?"
"Nothing, sir."
"You found Master Vernon Smith unconscious here?"
Well, I stumbled over him, sir," said Redwing. "I called to Wharton to switch on the light, and then we saw him."
"You saw no sign of a burglar?"
"Not till Smithy told us to call Mr. Quelch," said Harry. "Then I looked at Dr. Locke's desk and saw that a drawer had been broken open."
"Thank you, Master Wharton. Well, that's all at present."
The head made a sign, and the three juniors left the study.
"I'll take up no more of your time now, sir," said Mr. Grimes. "I have some investigations to make, and I may have something to tell you later. I certainly hope so."
And Dr. Locke proceeded to the sixth form room, Mr. Quelch to the remove, and Mr. Grimes was left to his meditation and investigations, whatever they were. Harry Wharton had rejoined his friends in the quad. It was only a few minutes now to class, and they were waiting for the bell when Bunter rolled up, spluttering with excitement, his little round eyes almost popping through his big round spectacles.
Burglars! gasped Bunter. What do you fellows think of that?
Burglars, was it? What sort of burglar is a burglar? Asked Bob.
Oh, really, Cherry? I found it all out. I've got it from Wingate of the 6th. He knows.
And he's told you all about it? Grinned Bob.
Well, he didn't exactly tell me. I heard him talking with Gwyn, explained Bunter. There's been a burglary in the head study.
You don't say so.
I jolly well do. Thousands of pounds gone. Thousands.
Oh, that all? Asked Frank Nugent. Not millions?
Oh, no, thousands, said Bunter. Of course the head wouldn't be likely to have millions of pounds in his study, Nugent.
About as likely as thousands, I should think, said Harry Wharton, laughing.
Well, that's all you know. Rolls of banknotes, stacks of them, heaps, a regular pile of banknotes. And I say, Smithy mixed up in it.
Mixed up in the pile of banknotes? Asked Bob. They all laughed.
No, you fathead. Not in the banknotes, in the burglary. That's where he got that cosh on his coconut. I say, some fellows went down in the middle of the night and found Smithy lying in the head study, covered with blood.
As bad as that? Said Wharton.
Oh, yes, I expect the burglar knocked him out with his jemmy,
explained Bunter. Oh, scissors, cried Bob.
No, Smithy got it on the nut, said Bunter. "Wingate says he seems to have walked right into the burglar. Silly ass. Some fellows came down and found him." "Found Wingate?" No, you ass. Found Smithy weltering in his gore."
"Well, Smithy's a tough nut," said Bob. "He looks pretty fit this morning for a chap who's been weltering in his gore overnight."
"Ha!" laughed the chums.
"I say, I wonder who those fellows were who came down and found Smithy."
"I can tell you if you want to know," said Harry, laughing.
"Gammon,"
said Bunter.
"Who were they?"
"Redwing and I."
"Eh? Why, you beast, you jolly well knew there was something up all the time. Why, you—"
Hello, there's the bell," exclaimed Bob Cherry.
But I say, you fellows, there's old Grimes."
Billy Bunter's eyes and spectacles fixed on a stocky figure emerging from the house.
"Think he's going to look for clues?"
Billy Bunter eyed the plump inspector inquisitively, curiously, almost hungrily.
"I say, it's pretty rotten to have to go into class with all this going on, ain't it?"
"Come on, you fat duffer," said Harry Wharton, and the famous five headed for the remove form room. But Billy Bunter did not follow them. Inquisitiveness was Bunter's besetting sin. He always wanted to know. And on this unusually thrilling occasion, more than ever, did Bunter want to know. Inspector Grimes seemed unaware that he was under observation. But he was. Billy Bunter watched him breathlessly. Mr. Grimes was rooting about at the window of the sixth form lobby. Bunter did not need telling that that was where the burglar had made his exit after knocking Smithy out in the head study. Obviously, the inspector was looking for clues. Grimy might find out something, and Billy Bunter fairly burned with curiosity to know what. Mr. Grimes was making a most meticulous examination of the stone sill under that window. Then, bent double, his plump figure rather suggesting a barrage balloon, he proceeded to scan the earth under the window, occasionally stirring the grass with a plump finger. Bunter at first watched from a respectful distance, but objects were rather dim to the owl of the remove at a distance, and gradually he edged nearer. Nearer and nearer the inquisitive owl edged, till he was only a few yards from behind the inspector's plump back. Mr. Grimes suddenly resumed the perpendicular, glanced round, and stared at Bunter.
"Oh!"
gasped Bunter. He goggled at Mr. Grimes. To his relief, Mr. Grimes did not look angry. Indeed, a faint smile came over his stolid red face. "Master Bunter, I think," said Mr. Grimes. He had had the pleasure, or otherwise, of making Billy Bunter's acquaintance long ago. Evidently he remembered him. Circumferentially, at least, Bunter was a fellow not easily forgotten.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Grimes."
"Good morning," said Mr. Grimes, politely.
"I expect you found the footsteps. I mean, the footprints," ventured Bunter.
"Oh, do you?" said Mr. Grimes.
"Well, that's the window where the burglar got out last night. They found it open when they searched the house, you know."
"Ah," said Mr. Grimes.
"Must have left some sign when he jumped out," said Bunter. "I expect you've spotted it."
"Indeed," said Mr. Grimes.
But if you haven't, I dare say I could help. I don't miss much."
Oh, it's very kind of you, Master Bunter, to offer to expend your valuable time in assisting the police in their duties,"
said Mr. Grimes, with a deep, deep sarcasm that was a sheer waste on Billy Bunter.
"Oh, not at all, Mr. Grimes," said the fatuous owl. "I fancy I could pick up any sign you missed."
Mr. Grimes gazed at William George Bunter. He looked very thoughtful. It did not occur to Bunter that he was considering whether to box Bunter's fat ears for his cheek or not. But having gazed at Bunter, he turned away and went into the house by the lobby door. Bunter blinked after him.
I say, Mr. Grimes."
Mr. Grimes did not reply. He disappeared into the lobby and shut the door after him. It really looked as if Mr. Grimes had no use for Bunter's kind assistance in the execution of his official duties. However, Being on the spot, Bunter proceeded to look for signs under the lobby window. But if the Courtfield inspector had made any discovery there, Bunter made none. Even with the aid of his big spectacles, the fat junior was unable to spot a single trace of anyone having jumped from that window. Bunter decided he'd better turn up for class. Really, it was high time. He rolled off to the form room, where all the remove stared at him as he rolled in, and Mr. Quelch fixed him with a grim, gimlet eye.
"Bunter," rumbled Mr. Quelch, "you are 20 minutes late for class."
Oh, yes, sir. I never heard the time, and I forgot the bell.
"What?"
No, I mean, I never heard the bell, and I forgot the time.
Bunter's voice trailed away. He had hoped that this would be good enough for Quelch, but Quelch picked up the cane from his desk.
"You will take 50 lines for unpunctuality, Bunter."
Oh, yes, sir.
"And," added Mr. Quelch grimly, "I shall cane you for untruthfulness, which is a much more serious matter. Bend over that chair, Bunter."
Whop!
Wow! Yow! Wow! Wow! Wow!
"You may go to your place, Bunter."
Billy Bunter went to his place, wriggling. Billy Bunter blinked into the changing room, where Harry Wharton and Co. and a good many other fellows had gathered. It was a half-holiday that afternoon, and the heroes of the remove were booked for cricket with Hobson and Co. of the Shell.
I say, seen Grimy?
He asked. Grimy? Repeated Bob Cherry, looking round. He's gone long ago.
Oh, good,
said Bunter.
He won't be in the head study then. If he's cleared off all right, I'm jolly well going to see where the burglar boggled. I mean the burglar burgled. No, I mean the burglar burgled.
You better not let the head spot you prying in his study, you fat chump, said Peter Todd. Billy Bunter winked a fat wink.
That's all right, Toddy. I've had an eye open for the head. He's in his garden now, jawing to twist. I saw him.
Leaving the fellows in the changing room laughing, Billy Bunter rolled away in the direction of the head study. Billy Bunter arrived at his headmaster's study, opened the door, and blinked in, and then rolled in. It was rather a risky game to pay a surreptitious visit to that awesome apartment, but it seemed to Bunter safe as houses, and when there was no danger, Bunter was bold as a lion. He shut the door after him. Then he proceeded to give the head's writing table the once-over. It was easy enough to spot the drawer that had been burgled. The lock and the wood surrounding it had been crudely and roughly broken by the instrument that had forced open the drawer. Billy Bunter blinked at it wisely through his big spectacles. Bunter would have been very bucked to pick up a clue, and if there was a clue to be spotted, he'd little doubt that he would spot it. But after 10 minutes of industrious blinking, Bunter had to admit that if a clue was there, he couldn't locate it. Bunter grunted. Still, he'd gratified his inquisitive curiosity, and seen what was to be seen, little as it was. His fat hand was almost on the door handle when a sound came from the corridor without. A sound of footsteps.
Oh, crikey!
Breathed Bunter. He stood transfixed in sheer terror. The footsteps were approaching the study door, footsteps of more than one person. He gave a wild blink round the study. There was no escape, and his only thought was to get out of sight. Bunter crammed himself desperately behind a massive high-backed armchair that stood in a corner. He was hardly out of sight when the door opened.
"Pray step in, Mr. Grimes."
It was the head's voice.
"An inside job, sir."
Dr. Locke looked inquiringly at Inspector Grimes. The head's learning was great, his erudition wide and deep, but he did not know what an inside job was.
"An inside job," repeated the inspector. "A job done from the inside, sir. Not a case of burglary from outside. Nobody entered this building last night."
Dr. Locke blinked at him.
Well, you do not mean to imply that some person resident in the house could have made off with £150 in banknotes?
He broke off blankly.
"Exactly, sir," said Mr. Grimes, with a nod. "I'm afraid it may be a shock to you, sir, but some person belonging to this establishment was pilfering here when the boy, Vernon Smith, unexpectedly interrupted him."
"Impossible,"
said the head. Inspector Grimes let that pass. He sat stolid, waiting for the schoolmaster to assimilate what he'd told him.
"I have every confidence in every servant employed at this school, sir,"
said the head, a little warmly.
"Oh, no doubt, sir. At the present moment, there's no more reason to suspect a servant than to suspect any other person here."
Dr. Locke gazed at him, quite aghast.
"At the moment, sir, no one can be excluded. It is, as I've said, an inside job, and the wanted man is here under this roof."
"Well, bless my soul," repeated Dr. Locke. "But this is beyond credence. You have, of course, some reason for supposing—"
"I'm not supposing, sir, but stating facts. I've made the most careful and meticulous examination of the window, the sill outside, and the grass below the sill. The result is the assurance that no one either entered or left the house by that window last night."
"Then it was a trick?"
"A simple trick, sir, but all that he could do to give the hoped-for impression that the pilferer had come from outside."
But,
murmured the head.
"Even before examining the window for traces, sir, I was aware that it was an inside job. The person, man or boy, whatever he was, knew where to look for the money."
"He knew?"
"Well, obviously, sir. There are dozens of drawers in your desk here, but it was the money drawer that was broken open, sir."
"Oh."
"We can hardly suppose, sir, that a stranger happened on the right drawer by sheer chance."
No, I had not thought of that."
"Well, this is not your line of country, sir,"
said the inspector with a faint smile.
Oh, quite. No, not my line of country, but...
In short, sir, some unscrupulous person crept down in the night, opened a ground-floor window to give an impression of an intruder from outside, stole into this study, broke open the money drawer, and helped himself to all that was there."
"Aha!"
breathed Dr. Locke.
"We know from Master Vernon Smith what happened next. The intruder was interrupted suddenly by a foolish boy coming into the room to play a thoughtless prank. The pilferer shut off his light instantly. His chief concern, I imagine, was to avoid being seen and identified. In the dark, he rushed for the door, knocked out the boy who was in his way, and ran. His first thought, naturally, was merely to escape unrecognised. In that he succeeded, but the person, sir, is obviously still here, and the money also. And I imagine that the pilferer concealed the bundle of notes in some hidden recess, where if it was found, it could throw no suspicion upon himself."
"Oh."
Dr. Locke nodded slowly.
"Oh, yes, I see."
"I shall, with your concurrence, take certain measures. In the meantime, I suggest that nothing of what I've told you shall be mentioned outside this study. The pilferer cannot fail to guess that I suspect an inside job, but the less he's put upon his guard, the better."
Nothing shall be said, Mr. Grimes."
"Very good, sir. I need take up no more of your time at present."
Mr. Grimes rose. Dr. Locke sat with a troubled face after the plump inspector had left him. He'd had a shock. A burglary would have been bad enough, but an inside job, some untrustworthy person in his very household, that was much more discomforting and distressing. At last he rose and left the study. The door closed behind him. Then, and not till then, did a fat head and a fat face rise from behind the back of the massive armchair in the corner. It was Bunter's chance to escape, at last. Billy Bunter was full of news, packed with news. He was the fellow who knew. Nobody else knew, except the head and Mr. Grimes, what Bunter knew. But cricket was going on little side. Harry Wharton and Tom Brown were at the wickets, and Hobson of the Shell was putting in some really good bowling. And the removed batsmen waiting at the pavilion were interested in the batting and in the bowling, but not in the least in William George Bunter. It was annoying and exasperating when nobody wanted to hear Bunter's news. They watched Harry Wharton dealing with Hobby's bowling, and did not even look at Bunter.
I say, you fellows.
"Dry up, old fat man," said Squiff.
Oh, really, Field? I say, I found it all out.
"Well hit!" roared Bob Cherry. "Good man! Bet you that's 3. The batsmen were running. It was, as Bob predicted, 3, and brought Tom Brown to the batting end.
I say, Bull.
"Hobby's a good man with the leather," remarked Johnny Bull, ruthlessly regardless of Bunter. "But Brownie'll put paid to him, you see."
I say, Ogilvy.
"Is that fat bluebottle still buzzing?" exclaimed Bob Cherry, looking round. "Buzz off, Bunter, and buzz somewhere else." "Hello, here comes Smithy," exclaimed Tom Redwing. "Squat down here, old chap. Head better?" The bounder grunted in reply to that inquiry. He was not looking amiable, and the dark bruise on his forehead showed up to great advantage in the bright sunshine. He had a lingering headache, and he looked, as he felt, disgruntled. But evidently he'd tired of his own company and had come down from the house to see how the cricket was going on.
I say, Smithy,
bleated Bunter. The bounder, as the man who'd encountered the pilferer in the head study, was sure to be interested in Bunter's startling tale.
"Oh, get out,"
grunted Smithy.
But I say, I found it all out. I heard old Grimy talking to the head.
"Don't tell me what you've heard at a keyhole, you fat prying owl," growled Vernon Smith.
"It wasn't at a keyhole."
Bunter grabbed Smithy's sleeve.
"I heard old Grimy say to the head, 'Beast! Oh, Beast, you jolly well kick me, and I'll jolly well...
Billy Bunter retired from the scene. The bounder, evidently, was not in a good temper, and nobody seemed to have any use for Bunter's news. And now that Vernon Smith was on the cricket ground, Billy Bunter's thoughts turned to the box of chocolates he knew Smithy had in number 4 study, inaccessible so long as Smithy was there, accessible now that Smithy wasn't there. The fat owl rolled away to the house. All was clear in the removed passage. Billy Bunter rolled into number 4 study, and the first object that met his eyes and his spectacles was that box of chocolates on the study table. Smithy apparently had been sampling the contents, but the box was still nearly full when Bunter grabbed off the lid. Staying only to cram a couple of fat chocolates into a capacious mouth to go on with, Bunter grabbed the box and rolled out of the study. Neither did he linger in the removed passage. The fat owl hurried up the passage to the little stair at the end that led up to the removed box room. A minute more, and he was safe in the box room. There was a bolt on the door, which Bunter promptly secured in case of pursuit. Then he sat down on a big trunk and started on the chocolates. A few minutes later, Bunter heard a light step on the box-room stair. The door-handle turned. Billy Bunter's eyes and spectacles fixed in alarm on the door. He'd no doubt it was Smithy, after him and the chocks. Whoever it was seemed surprised to find that the door did not budge.
"Oh, crikey!"
gasped Bunter, in terror that the bolt might give.
I say, you can't get in, you beast. It's no use shoving, so yah!"
To his surprise and relief, the pressure on the door ceased instantly. There was a sound of a quick, light footstep that died away down the box-room stair.
"Beast!"
breathed Bunter. Smithy was gone, but Bunter had little doubt that the beast would be waiting for him below to catch him as he came downstairs. But the fat owl knew a trick worth 2 of that. The box-room window overlooked flat leads, from which it was easy, even for Bunter, to scramble down to the ground with the aid of a massive old rain-pipe. The alarm over, Billy Bunter's attention returned to the chocolates, and he resumed enjoying life. There was a cheery crowd in the rag. Bunter rolled in and snorted as Cricket Jaw fell on both his fat ears from all sides.
I've a good mind not to tell you, said Bunter.
You've got a good mind? Asked Bob Cherry.
Well, yes, I jolly well have.
First I've heard of it. Why don't you use it sometimes?
Yeah! I say, you fellows, if you knew what I know, you'd jolly well sit up and take notice. £150 spotted about the school.
What?
£150, said Bunter. Fivers, tenors, pound notes spotted about Greyfriars somewhere. A hidden recess. Yes, that's what I was going to tell you, though I've a jolly good mind not to now.
A dozen fellows stared at Bunter. He had attention at last. Been dropping your loose change about? Asked the bounder sarcastically. Ha 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 ha! They all laughed. Bunter gave Herbert Vernon Smith a rather uneasy blink. He'd rather expected to hear something from Smithy on the subject of chocolates when he saw him again. But Smithy did not seem to be thinking about chocolates, much to the fat owl's relief. "Has your postal order come, Bunty?" asked Frank Nugent, laughing. "Cashed it and dropped the money."
Oh, really, Nugent, it's the head's cash. The bundle that was snooped from his desk last night. It wasn't a burglary, after all. It was an inside job. That's what Grimy called it, and I suppose he knows.
"And Grimy told you?" asked Johnny Bull, with a snort.
"He jolly well told the head, and I jolly well heard him," retorted Bunter. "Well, how could I help hearing when I was in the room? As it happened, I heard the lot. I say, you fellows, I wonder who snooped the dough. Grimy says it was somebody in the school, and he's still here."
"What utter rot!" exclaimed Harry Wharton. "The rotfulness is terrific," echoed Hurry Jamset Ram Singh. "Chuck it, Bunter! Get out!" But for once, Bunter stood his ground.
"An inside job! I tell you, that's what Grimy said," roared Bunter. "He said the snooper is somebody in the school, and he's still here, and he's hidden the loot about Greyfriars somewhere, and nobody knows where."
"It's impossible!" exclaimed Harry.
"Oh, think you know better than Grimy?"
There was a buzz in the rag now. The idea of £150 hidden somewhere about the school had caused a sensation.
"Grimy said that a burglar wouldn't know which was the money drawer," went on Bunter. "He said the snooper knew. See?"
"By gum!" exclaimed Vernon Smith. He passed his hand over the bruise on his forehead, and his eyes glinted. Grimy was right, if Bunter heard him say that. How the deuce would a burglar know the head kept money in that drawer, or in his desk at all? I wonder I never thought of it. The man who knocked me out last night wasn't an outsider. He was an insider. Of course he was. The bounder evidently had no doubt on that point. "I say, look here, it's all rot," said Bob Cherry. "Why, if the snooper's here, he might be anybody. You didn't see him, Smithy?" "No, he took jolly care of that, and I know why now," said the bounder, his eyes gleaming. "But now I know he's here—" "You don't," said Bob. "That fat ass has got it all wrong, if he really heard anything at all."
"Oh, really, Cherry? I jolly well word every heard. I jolly well heard every word. I'm going to look for it. If a fellow found it, they'd have to stand him something out of it. At least a fiver," said Bunter eagerly. "Perhaps a tenner, what?"
"Grimy may find it," said the bounder sardonically. "But if Bunter finds it, Grimy won't."
"Why, you beast, think I'd touch it?"
roared Bunter in great indignation. "Oh, chuck it, Smithy," said Bob. "You know Bunter wouldn't. I know he snoops every fellow's tuck that he can lay his fat paws on," sneered the bounder. "If we see Bunter blowing cash at the tuck shop, I shan't believe for one that his postal order's come."
"Why, you
stuttered Bunter in spluttering wrath. "Chuck it, Smithy," said Harry Wharton sharply. The bounder shrugged his shoulders. The day-room was in a buzz now. The mere idea of a hidden treasure somewhere about Greyfriars was exciting. Mr. Grimes, when he advised the head that nothing should be said outside the study, had been happily unaware of a fat owl drinking in every word behind the armchair in the corner. Before prep that evening, there was hardly a man at Greyfriars who had not heard the startling story, and did not know that a bundle of tenors and fivers and pound notes was spotted somewhere about the school. Mr. Quelch glanced over his form in class the following morning with a sharp, suspicious eye. He could see that something was on in the remove. There were many signs of suppressed excitement. Fellows whispered to one another. The fattest member of the form seemed hardly able to keep still. It seemed to the remove that the form room clock never would indicate 10:45, but at long last it did, and the juniors fairly scampered out into the quad when freedom came. Mr. Quelch stood looking after them with a puzzled, frowning brow. What was on in his form that morning? Coker of the 5th passed him, going out of the house with his pals Potter and Green, and Mr. Quelch heard from Coker, "Bit exciting, ain't it? Sort of treasure hunt." They passed on, leaving Mr. Quelch gazing at their backs. It dawned on him that the excitement that morning was not confined to the remove. It was shared in other forms, even the 5th, a senior form. Mr. Quelch walked out and stopped to speak to Wingate of the 6th, who was discussing something with Gwyn and Sykes of that form.
"Wingate, there seems to be some excitement among the boys," said the remove master. "Have you any idea of its cause?"
I think so, sir," said Wingate. "There's a story going round the school that the banknotes taken from the head's desk on Tuesday night are hidden about the place somewhere."
"Bless my soul. Who could have set such a rumour in circulation?"
"I've no idea, sir, but it's all over the school," answered Wingate with a smile. "The fags are all going treasure hunting, I believe."
"Dear me," said
Mr. Quelch, and he went back into the house to see the head about it. "What about our box room?" asked the bounder. "Any special reason for looking in our box room, Smithy?" said Johnny Bull. "Yes," said Vernon Smith. The chums of the remove gave him attention at once. So far as they could see, there was absolutely no clue, no hint of a clue, to the hideout of the bundle of notes. It might have been hidden almost anywhere, and in a rambling ancient pile like Greyfriars School, there were innumerable nooks and crannies where a small packet could lie concealed. "Cough it up, Smithy," said the captain of the remove. "Why our box room specially?" "Because the door's fastened," said Vernon Smith. "Skinner went up after prep last night. I dare say you know he parks his cigarettes in the box room, and he couldn't get in and get his fags. And so the poor dog had none," sighed Bob Cherry. "But that's odd," said Harry. "Why should anybody fasten the door of our box room?" "Well, that's what I wondered," said Smithy. "I cut up before class to see if Skinner was right, and the door wouldn't open. It's been bolted inside. Whoever did it must have got out by the window." "Well, why?" "By gum," said Bob. "Looks as if somebody or other wants to keep fellows from wandering into that box room." "Exactly. We'll search that box room for a start, then," said Harry Wharton. "We can get in by the window, if there's no beaks about." "Good egg," said Bob. "No end of a catch if we bag the giddy treasure. One up for the remove. Come on." And the bunch of juniors walked away to circle round the school buildings with an eye open for beaks. They stopped by the massive old rain pipe that gave access to the flat leads under the box-room window. Descent was an easy matter, as Billy Bunter had found. Ascent was more difficult. But little difficulties were not likely to stop schoolboys on the track of treasure. Herbert Vernon Smith grasped the rain pipe and began to clamber up. The famous 5 stood watching him, ready to climb in their turn. "Dear me," said a querulous voice behind the juniors. "Whatever does this mean?" The famous 5 spun round as if touched by the same spring. They stared at little Mr. Twiss. Vernon Smith, halfway up the rain pipe, twisted to look down and glared at him. "I say, it's all right, Mr. Twiss," said Bob. "We're getting up to our box room. Some sportsman has bolted the door on the inside." Dear me, surely it would be better to speak to your form master," said Mr. Twiss. "No doubt Gosling could enter by his ladder and unfasten the door." "Well, we're actually rather pushed for time, sir," said Bob. "A break doesn't last long, and we're after the treasure." The what?" exclaimed Mr. Twiss, staring at him. "Haven't you heard about the head's banknotes, sir?" asked Bob. "It's all over the school that they're hidden somewhere about Greyfriars." "Nonsense," snapped Mr. Twiss. "We thought of looking in the box room, sir." "Vernon Smith, come down at once. You are risking life and limb," said Mr. Twiss sharply. The famous 5 exchanged glances. Twiss, in their opinion, was a nervous little rabbit of a man, and very likely the bounder, clinging to the rainpipe, looked to him in a perilous position.
"Smithy's all right, sir," said Harry.
"I cannot allow this, Wharton. You are well aware that Mr. Quelch would not allow anything of the kind. Vernon Smith, come down at once."
The bounder, clinging to the rainpipe, gave Mr. Twiss a dogged look. Who the dickens was Twiss?
"Do you hear me, Vernon Smith?"
"Aren't you our headmaster's secretary, sir?"
asked Vernon Smith.
"Eh? What? Oh, yes. What do you mean, Vernon Smith?"
"They haven't made you master of the remove, by any chance?" said the bounder with cool impertinence. "Better chuck it, Smithy," said Harry Wharton.
"Vernon Smith, you are impertinent," exclaimed Mr. Twiss. "I shall report your impertinence to your form-master. Now, come down at once."
"Rats,"
said Smithy, and with cool disregard of Twiss, he resumed clambering up the rainpipe. Harry Wharton and Co. stood in dismay. This meant a report to Quelch and a row. The bounder was the man for rows. Twiss evidently was angry, and they expected him to walk away in quest of Mr. Quelch at once. But Mr. Twiss did not walk away. He made a stride towards the rainpipe, reached up, and grasped Vernon Smith's ankle. "Come down at once," he snapped. The bounder set his teeth. All his obstinacy was roused now. He hung on to the rainpipe. "Will you come down, Vernon Smith?" "No," snapped the bounder.
"Smithy," warned Harry Wharton.
"Look out!"
roared Bob in alarm.
"Oh, my hat!"
Mr. Twiss was jerking angrily at the bounder's ankle, and Smithy's hold was too precarious for that. He came suddenly slithering down the rainpipe and landed with a heavy bump, sprawling on the earth. "Oh!" he roared as he landed. Harry Wharton and Co. ran to help the bounder up. Vernon Smith's face was furious. Mr. Twiss blinked at him through his rimless pince-nez.
"You foolish boy, I hope you're not hurt. It was wholly your own fault. Such recklessness."
Vernon Smith's reply, if he had made one, would certainly not have poured oil on the troubled waters. But the famous five gave him no opportunity of cheeking Mr. Twiss any further. They surrounded him and hustled him away. Mr. Twiss stood blinking after them as they went.
"Leave go, you fatheads. Why couldn't the meddling little beast mind his own business?" hissed the bounder. "He's always shoving him where he's not wanted."
"Let him rip," said Bob soothingly. "You can't row with Twiss. We'll have another shot after third school." The bounder grunted angrily, but he suffered the chums of the remove to lead him away. Thus William George Bunter. Bunter seemed amused. After third school, Harry Wharton and Co. were in the quad. They were waiting for Smithy, who'd been kept back by Mr. Quelch when the remove came out. They could guess that Twiss had spoken to Quelch, and that Quelch had something to say to Smithy on the subject. Billy Bunter's fat face was irradiated by a wide grin, a grin so wide that it seemed almost to extend from one fat ear to the other, and he chuckled explosively. Bob Cherry looked round. "Shut off that alarm clock, Bunter," he said.
"You silly ass!"
hooted Bunter, realizing that it was his fat cachinnation to which Bob alluded.
"Think the snooper parked the banknotes in the box room and bolted the door?"
"It looks like it, doesn't it, you burbling bloater?" said Johnny Bull. Bunter almost wept with mirth.
You see, I jolly well know who bolted that box room door."
"You do?" exclaimed Harry Wharton, staring. "Who did it, then?" demanded Frank Nugent.
"I did."
"You?" roared all the famous five together. Bunter spluttered with merriment. "You fat, foozling, frumptious, footling frump," said Bob Cherry. "What the thump did you bolt that door for, if you did bolt it?"
"Because that beast Smithy was after me,"
giggled Bunter.
"See? And not that I had the chalks from his study, of course."
"You had Smithy's chalks?"
No, I never touched that box,"
said Bunter warmly. "You bagged Smithy's chalks and took them up to the box room to scoff," said Bob. "Is that it, you fat brigand?"
"Oh, really, Cherry, I told you I never touched Smithy's chocks. As if I'd touch his chocks, said Bunter disdainfully. And there weren't very many either. They didn't last me 10 minutes. I thought I'd bolt the box room door in case he came up. And when he came up after me, he couldn't get in, see?
Smithy came up after you, said Harry Wharton blankly.
Yes, and I got away by the window, grinned Bunter. That's how the door was left bolted, see?
The famous five stared at Bunter. "I don't make this out," said Bob. "If Smithy got after Bunter and couldn't get into the box room, he must have known the door was bolted. But it was Smithy who thought the bolted door might be a clue."
"Rot!" said Bunter. "Smithy jolly well knew. I tell you, he came up after me and pushed at the door, and I jolly well told him it was no good shoving, too. I jolly well knew he'd be waiting for me, and that's why I cleared by the window."
It was quite mystifying to the famous five.
Hello, hello, hello.
Here's Smithy himself. Herbert Vernon Smith came out of the house with a sullen brow. Billy Bunter sidled behind the famous five as he came up. Smithy had not mentioned the subject of chocolates so far, but the fat owl could not feel quite easy in his fat mind.
"No need to climb in at the window," grunted the bounder. "That rabbit Twiss has told Quelch, and Gosling got him with his ladder while we were in class, and the door's unbolted now. Quelch has given me a detention for cheeking Twiss." "Bunter says that he bolted that door yesterday," said Harry.
"What?"
yelled Smithy.
"What, you didn't know?"
asked Bob.
"You footling ass. Should I have fancied that the snooper did it if I'd known Bunter did it? Talk sense."
"Well, I say, this is a bit mixed," said Bob.
"What was Bunter doing in the box room, then?"
snapped Vernon Smith.
"Oh, nothing," said Bunter hastily. "Nothing to do with chalks."
"Chocks," repeated Vernon Smith unpleasantly.
"Oh, I see. That's where my box of chocolates went, is it?"
No, it ain't," roared Bunter. "I wasn't eating chalks when you shoved at the door."
Vernon Smith stared at the fat owl.
"I never shoved at the door, you fathead. I never went up to the box room at all yesterday."
"Oh, wasn't it you? I wondered why you didn't say anything. I thought it was you, and I jolly well cleared by the window because I thought you'd be waiting outside."
"Well, let's go and search the jolly old box room now it's open," said Bob.
"Hold on a minute,"
said Vernon Smith. There was a glint in his eyes.
"You were in the box room scoffing my chocks, Bunter."
"No, I haven't tasted chalks for weeks."
"You howling ass, never mind the chocks. I want to know what happened."
Oh, well, if you ain't going to make a fuss about the chalks, Smithy."
"No, you fathead. No, you prize porker. Now, tell me what happened while you were in the box room."
"Oh, well, all right. Well, you came up after me and shoved at the door, and I jolly well told you you couldn't shove it open, too. I mean, I thought it was you. It was somebody."
"Didn't he speak?"
"Not a word. Just sneaked down the box room stairs as soon as I spoke."
"It might have been Skinner after his smokes," said Bob.
"Oh, don't be an ass. Skinner would have slanged the fat chump for bolting him out, and so would I. So would any remove man," snapped Vernon Smith.
"Well, nobody but a removed man would go up to our box room," said Nugent. "Nobody else ever goes there."
"Oh, quite," jeered the bounder. "Nobody at all. Unless it was somebody who had a special reason, somebody who might have hidden a packet there and wanted to help himself from the packet and sneaked off quietly when he found that somebody was in the box room."
"What?" gasped the famous five all together. For a moment they stared at the bounder. The next moment 6 juniors tore into the house, leaving Billy Bunter blinking after them blankly through his big spectacles.
"That fool Twiss," said the bounder between his teeth. "Eh? What about Twiss?" asked Bob Cherry.
"Only that he's dished us," snapped Vernon Smith savagely. "If he hadn't barged in this morning, we should have had it."
They were in the remove box room. Every foot, or rather every inch of the box room, was scanned and scrutinized. An empty chocolate box rewarded the eager seekers, but nothing else. Of a packet of notes there was no sign.
"Smithy isn't quite such a Sherlock Holmes as he fancied," remarked Johnny Bull sarcastically.
Herbert Vernon Smith hands in his pockets, a scowl on his face, stood staring at a little ventilator in the wall, a little rusty iron grid about the size of a brick. Bob Cherry had jerked at it to see whether it could be moved, and found that it could, but there was nothing in the orifice behind it but dust and cobwebs. They were disappointed, but not so bitterly as the bounder. All the fellows were keen to discover the treasure, but with Smithy it was a personal matter, as a hit back at the unknown snooper who had knocked him out in the dark. "That fool Twiss," he repeated. "If he hadn't meddled this morning, we should have got in at that window." "What good would it have done, as the thing isn't here after all?" asked Johnny Bull. "Fathead." "Oh, thanks," said Johnny dryly. "I don't quite see, Smithy," said Harry. "You wouldn't," snapped the bounder. "The absurd packet is not here," remarked Hari Jamset Ram Singh. "Not now," snarled Smithy. "Oh," exclaimed Harry Wharton. "You think I don't think, I know. Gosling came up on his ladder and got in and unbolted the door while we were in third school. Well, after that the snooper could walk in when he liked, and there was nobody about during class. He came here and took it away to put it in a safer place." Harry Wharton and Co. looked at the bounder and looked at one another. "Go it, Smithy," grinned Bob Cherry. "You can look on us as a lot of Dr. Watsons and explain the jolly old mystery like Mr. Holmes. I suppose you know just where the snooper parked it." "So would you if you used your eyes," snapped the bounder. He pointed to the little ventilator in the wall. "Oh, nothing there but dust and cobwebs," said Bob. "I've looked. If you looked again, you might notice that the dust has been disturbed and the cobwebs torn," sneered Smithy. "Oh!" exclaimed Bob. Harry Wharton and Co. gathered under the ventilator. Bob jerked out the little iron grid again, and they stared into the dusty, cobwebby opening. Now that they examined it more closely, most certainly it looked as if that dusty recess had been recently groped into. "Well, if it was here, it's gone," said Nugent. "No if about it," snapped the bounder. "It was there, and we should have had it in break but for that rabbit-faced idiot Twiss." "Well, we can't be sure," said Harry. "You can't, I dare say," snapped Smithy. "They seem to have forgotten you and your pals when brains were served out." With that polite rejoinder, Herbert Vernon Smith walked, or rather stamped, out of the box-room and tramped away down the stairs. Smithy was disappointed and angry, and in such a mood his manners were never very polished. "Smithy may be right," said Harry. "It does certainly look as if somebody's been groping in that ventilator, but it doesn't get us any forwarder," remarked Bob. "No, let's get out. Might try the old cloisters," said Nugent. "Lots of nooks and crannies there where a packet might be hidden." "Yes, let's," said Bob. A glitter came into Vernon Smith's eyes as he glanced at little Mr. Twiss walking in the quad with Hacker, the master of the shell. He watched the head secretary with a black scowl as the little man trotted by the side of the long, lean Hacker. "That tame little rabbit, that footling little bunny, couldn't mind his own business," the bounder savagely reflected. "He had to barge in where he wasn't wanted and give the snooper a chance to remove the hidden packet before it could be found, just as if he'd done it on purpose." And as that phrase formed itself in the bounder's mind, he caught his breath with a sudden start. "Oh," muttered Smithy, his heart beating. He stood watching Mr. Twiss intently, intensely. Strange and startling thoughts were working in his mind.
"My postal order hasn't come."
5 fellows chuckled. Billy Bunter made that announcement after class. He made it with a serious fat face, blinking very seriously at Harry Wharton and Co. through his big spectacles. After class, the treasure hunt had been resumed and had gone on merrily. Fellows searched and quested and rooted in every possible and impossible corner for the hidden packet. Nobody so far had had any luck. The famous 5 were now taking a rest, sitting in a cheery row on one of the old oaken benches under the elms, with a massive trunk behind them and shady branches overhead.
"Well, you can cackle,"
said Bunter morosely.
"But it's a bit awkward. At the present moment, I'm actually stony."
"Wet prospect," said Bob Cherry sympathetically.
"Well, it's pretty rotten,"
said Bunter.
"Now, if one of you fellows lends me 10 bob, I'll let you have it back out of my postal order, you see?"
"Nothing about me, Billy, old chap. Sorry."
"Oh, what about you, Nugent? You're not so jolly mean as Cherry."
"I am," contradicted Nugent. "Worse, in fact."
"Well, you fellows are a stingy lot here,"
said Bunter in disgust.
"and I haven't been able to find that beastly packet yet. I've hunted everywhere. And do you fellows think that if a fellow found the packet, he might borrow one of the pound notes?"
"What?"
Temporarily, of course," said
Bunter hastily.
"What do you think, Wharton?"
"I think you'd better not look for that packet any more, old fat man, if you don't want to put in next term at Borstal."
Well, if you think I'd touch it, Wharton, it only shows that you've got a rotten, suspicious mind like Smithy. But I don't feel so jolly sure it's hidden about Greyfriars at all. I've looked all over the shop. Grimey's an old donkey, isn't he?"
Bunter sniffed.
"That's my opinion of him."
"Thank you, Master Bunter," said an unexpected voice. Billy Bunter jumped almost clear of the ground. Harry Wharton and co. all stared round. From behind the massive elm at the back of the bench, a plump red face looked.
"Oh!"
gasped Bunter. Mr. Grimes glared at the fat owl.
"I heard what you said,"
he rapped.
I didn't mean you,"
gasped Bunter.
I was speaking of another old donkey."
If Billy Bunter expected that to placate Mr. Grimes, he was disappointed. The plump inspector came round the elm, and his look as he came was so grim that Billy Bunter backed away in alarm, revolved upon his axis, and departed hurriedly for the open spaces. Inspector Grimes glared after him and grunted. The famous five exchanged glances, rose from the old bench, and walked away to the house for tea. Inspector Grimes sat on the bench they had vacated. The bounder walked across to the elms. He'd taken plenty of time to think over the sudden and startling suspicion that had shot into his mind that morning, and the more he pondered over it, the more assured he felt that he'd put his finger on the facts. Inspector Grimes glanced at Vernon Smith as he came, and raised his eyebrows as Smithy dropped on the bench beside him. "Excuse me, Mr. Grimes." The bounder spoke quietly. "I suppose if a fellow hit on something that looked suspicious, he ought to mention it to you."
"Oh, quite,"
said Mr. Grimes with heavy sarcasm. "I've already had an offer of assistance from Master Bunter." "I'm not a goat like Bunter, I hope," said Smithy. "I can show you the place, if you like, where the packet was hidden, though it's been taken away since, and I believe I can point out the man who snooped it on Tuesday night." Inspector Grimes's keen eyes fixed on his face. He listened with attention while the bounder, in a few succinct words, told him of the search in the remove box room and his reasons for believing that the packet had been concealed in the ventilator.
"I shall examine the spot," said Mr. Grimes. "Is that all?"
"Not quite. Suppose," said the bounder slowly, "suppose that the packet was there, and that we should have found it in break this morning by getting in at the window, only we were interrupted and stopped by a man who is not a master, and had no right to interfere. A mere coincidence, perhaps, that it gave the snooper an opportunity of getting the packet away to a safer place."
"Well, quite possibly, I should think,"
said the inspector dryly. "And suppose," said the bounder, "that it happened to be the same man who was up late one night, and into whom I ran in the dark when I left my dormitory for my own reasons." Mr. Grimes's eyes narrowed.
"Did the man explain why he was up late that night?" he asked.
"Oh, yes," said the bounder. "He couldn't sleep, and was going down for a book."
"Oh, quite a natural proceeding,"
said Mr. Grimes. "Not quite so natural to go down in the dark, keeping so quiet that a fellow butted into him. Why couldn't he have switched on the light?" Mr. Grimes made no rejoinder to that. "There was a row when I barged him on the stairs, and Mr. Quelch came out. The man had to leave the job till the following night. and left it till midnight to make it safer. Is that all? Not quite all yet. A week or two ago, some fellows in my form took a short cut at the Three Fishers. You know the place. Rather juicy. Out of bounds for Greyfriars men, of course. They put on speed and ran into this same man coming in at the gate. They expected him to report them to Quelch. And? I told them he wouldn't, if they'd really seen him going into the Three Fishers. He wouldn't want that talked about among the beaks. Well, he didn't. Mr. Grimes sat silent. He had listened attentively and patiently to the bounder. "Well, that's all," said Vernon Smith. The bounder's eyes glinted, and he passed his hand over the dark bruise on his forehead. "I know now who gave me this. I've been thinking it over ever since this morning, and I've got it clear. It all fits in." Mr. Grimes did not speak. "We know all about the inside job since the story got out," went on Smithy. "Somebody was hard pushed for cash and knew where to lay his hands on it. The man I'm speaking of would know better than anyone else. Perhaps he hadn't had luck on a horse," added the bounder, his lip curling. "Anyhow, he dabbles in it, or those fellows wouldn't have seen him where they saw him." Still no rejoinder from Mr. Grimes. Herbert Vernon Smith gave him a hard look. "You think it's all moonshine, and that I've let my fancy run away with me because the man's meddled with me, and I don't like him?" he snapped. "Not at all unlikely, Master Vernon Smith." "All right." The bounder set his lips and rose from the bench. "If it's all moonshine, forget it." Vernon Smith moved away. "Oh, one moment, please," said Mr. Grimes quietly. "You've not told me the name of the man you've referred to." "Oh, you don't want any more moonshine," said the bounder. "I've wasted too much of your time already." There was a mocking glimmer in his eyes. "If you think there's something in it, you can say so, and I'll give you the name." Mr. Grimes breathed heavily through his stubby nose. He looked very long and very hard at the bounder. "I think what you've told me may be worth investigating," he said at last, slowly and reluctantly. The bounder laughed. "Well, that's good enough. The name's Twiss." Inspector Grimes almost jumped off the bench. "Your headmaster's secretary?" he stuttered. For once, Mr. Grimes was startled out of his stolid official calm. Plainly, little Mr. Twiss had never entered his thoughts. "Did you say Twiss?" "T-W-I-S-S. The bounder spelt it out. T for Thomas, W for Walter, I for Isaac. "No, that will do," said Mr. Grimes gruffly. The bounder laughed again and walked away. Mr. Grimes looked after him with a grim, disapproving stare. Then Mr. Grimes's eyes fixed on a dapper figure at a distance. Little Mr. Twiss was taking a walk in the quad, his rimless pince-nez gleaming in the sunshine. He looked, in the eyes of all Greyfriars fellows, a harmless rabbit of a little man. Was there more in little Mr. Twiss than met the eye?
"I say, you fellows, can you change a tenner for me?"
That question seemed to electrify every fellow in the rag. Bunter's stony state was well known. That morning Bunter had been trying to borrow any little sum, from threepence to half a crown, up and down the remove. In break, he'd blinked in vain for a letter in the rack. His celebrated postal order seemed to be still delayed in transit. After third school, Bunter was as hard up as ever, going to and fro like the lion of old, seeking what he might devour. After class, he'd wandered forth on his own, once more treasure-hunting, and had not been seen for some time. Now he rolled into the rag, a cheery grin on his fat face, and propounded that startling question that caused every eye in the junior day-room to turn upon him. The famous five, chatting by the window, spun round. "Did you say a tenner, Bunter?" gasped Bob Cherry.
"Yes, old chap. Got some change?"
"You've got a £10 note," exclaimed Harry Wharton.
Eh? Well, I shouldn't ask you to change it if I hadn't, should I?"
asked Bunter.
"This beats the band," said Harold Skinner with a whistle. "The whole school's been hunting for those banknotes, and the biggest idiot at Greyfriars is the lucky man. Can you beat it?" "Where'd you find the packet, Bunter?" asked Hazel. Bunter blinked at him.
Eh? I haven't found any packet, Hazel.
"You haven't?" roared Bolsover Major.
Of course not. Now, I've been looking for it, but I haven't found it. It wasn't in the cloisters, at least not where I looked.
"You haven't found the packet, but you've got a tenner?" exclaimed Frank Nugent.
Exactly, old chap. Can you change it for me?
"I say, doesn't he take the biscuit?" said Bob Cherry. "What did I tell you?" said Vernon Smith. "Bunter's found it, and findings are keepings with Bunter."
Oh, really, Smithy?
"Has he really got a tenner, or is he pulling our leg?" grunted Johnny Bull. "If he has, we know where he got it. But has he?"
That Bunter had a tenner was soon demonstrated, for he drew it from his tattered wallet, which seldom had a 10-shilling note in it, let alone a 10-pound one. But there it was. Tenners were seldom seen in the Remove, but they knew one when they saw it, and here was one. Bunter held it out to the bounder.
You've got tons of oof, Smithy. You can change it for me. I'd rather not take it to the tack shop.
"Why not?" grinned the bounder.
Well, Mrs. Mimble might be inquisitive about it. It might get to Quelch, and he'd ask questions, you see.
"Bank on that," chuckled Smithy. He stared at the banknote, but did not offer to take it.
"You unutterable idiot, Bunter,"
said Harry Wharton. The captain of the Remove was looking and feeling quite aghast.
"If you found that banknote in the packet, take it to Quelch at once."
I didn't,
roared Bunter indignantly.
"Then where did you get it?"
Like your cheek to ask a fellow where he gets a tip,
retorted Bunter.
I don't ask you where you get a tin-bob note when you have one.
"You howling ass," hooted Bob Cherry. "If you don't say where you got it, you think anybody will believe it's yours?"
It's mine. I've got it, haven't I?
"Bunter's got it," grinned Smithy. "And as soon as Grimy hears of it, he will get Bunter." "Borstal for Bunter," said Snoop.
Why, you beast, are you making out that this tenner ain't mine?"
demanded Bunter. "It can't be yours, you fat chump," said Peter Todd, "and you've jolly well got to tell us where you got it."
I'll jolly well please myself about that. Anybody would think I don't get lots of remittances from the way you fellows stare. Haven't you ever seen a tenner before?
"Cough it up," roared Peter.
Beast!
retorted Bunter. Most of the fellows had been down on the bounder's suggestion that if Bunter found the treasure, it would not be safe from his fat fingers. But they could hardly help agreeing with the bounder now. There were a quantity of 10-pound notes in the missing packet. Bunter had been hunting for the packet. A few hours ago he'd been trying to borrow sixpences. Now he had a tenner. The thing really spoke for itself, especially as everyone knew how very vague were Billy Bunter's ideas on the subject of meum and tuum. That the 10-pound note came from the missing packet could hardly be doubted by any fellow present. Most of the fellows were alarmed and concerned for the fatuous owl. Peter Todd's concern went to the length of taking Bunter by a fat ear, eliciting a howl of anguish from the proprietor thereof.
Ow! Ow! Let go! Beast!
howled Bunter. He jerked his ear away and rubbed it, glaring at Peter with a glare that almost cracked his spectacles.
Keep off, Toddy, you beast!
"Where did you get it?"
shrieked Peter.
Find out! Look here, Smithy, are you going to change this tenner for me or not?
"Not," grinned Smithy. "Take it to Quelch and ask him to change it," suggested Skinner.
Well, I can't. We ain't allowed to have tenners in the Remove, as you jolly well know. I don't want Quelch to know anything about it.
"I guess you sure do not," chuckled Fisher T. Fish. "Say, what have you done with the rest, big boy?"
Eh? The rest of what?
"Oh, come on, I guess you cinched the whole packet. That tenner wasn't lying around on its lonesome."
I tell you, I never. And you can jolly well go and eat coke.
And with that, the fat owl of the Remove, dodging Peter's hand as it reached for a fat ear again, rolled out of the rag, leaving that apartment in a buzz behind him. "Hello, hello, hello. Roll in, Barrel." It was rather unusual for William George Bunter to receive so cordial an invitation when he presented his fat person in a study doorway at tea-time. But on this occasion, number one study seemed actually glad to see him. Harry Wharton and Co. had gathered there for tea, rather a frugal tea. It was not exactly a festive table for 5 schoolboys blessed with healthy youthful appetites, and certainly an energetic trencherman like Bunter was likely to make short work of it. Nevertheless, Bob Cherry cordially invited him to roll in, and the other 4 all nodded assent. The fact was that Harry Wharton and his friends were anxious about Bunter. That tenner had alarmed them. It was practically impossible to believe that it belonged to the impecunious owl. How could it, when only that day he'd been scrounging up and down the remove for a humble tanner, a mere 6pence? The obvious explanation was that he'd chanced upon the hidden packet and helped himself to one of the banknotes, especially as he'd been known to be looking for the treasure just before he walked in with the banknote. Bunter was just the fellow to persuade himself by some fatuous mental process that there'd been no great harm in accommodating himself temporarily in that way. Bunter's fat brain moved in mysterious ways its wonders to perform. But the view that would be taken of such a proceeding by the headmaster or a police inspector was quite alarming to think of. So for once the famous 5 were glad to see Bunter roll in, hoping to be able to save himself from himself, as it were. Bunter blinked a little suspiciously at the juniors in number 1 study.
I say, you fellows, no larks, he said.
The larkfulness is not terrific, my esteemed fat Bunter, assured Hari Jamset Ram Singh.
I say, what have you got for tea?
Bunter blinked at the frugal tea table with a blink of ineffable scorn.
Is that all you've got? Hard up, what? Well, I've been hard up occasionally.
Only occasionally? Remarked Frank Nugent.
All right now, though. Look here. I'm going to stand you fellows a spread, best you can get at the tuck shop. Nothing mean about me, I hope. You'll have to change the tenner for me, of course. Mind, I'm not doing this simply because I can't get the tenner changed. No, I'm doing it because I'm a generous chap, as you know.
Oh, you can't get the tenner changed? Asked Bob.
Now, I say, you fellows, that cad Temple said he wouldn't touch my tenner with a barge pole. He said I'd better take it back where it belonged.
Jolly good advice, grunted Johnny Bull.
It's a queer thing, you fellows, but everybody who hears that I've got a tenner thinks at once that I've found that packet. As if I'd touch it if I had.
Only yesterday you were talking about borrowing a £1 note from it if you found it, hooted the captain of the remove.
But that was only a figure of speech, you know. What I meant was that I wouldn't, explained Bunter. Besides, this ain't a £1 note, it's a tenner. Talk sense.
From what we've heard, there were a lot of £1 notes in the packet, said Johnny Bull.
I say, is it possible that that banknote does belong to Bunter? Asked Bob Cherry, gazing at the fat owl in wonder. Look here, Bunter. If that tenner's yours, you can say how you came by it. If you don't, it'll be all over the school soon that you've found that packet, and the beaks will get wise to it before long, and then where will you be? Bunter blinked at him. Well, if I tell you, will you fellows change it for me?
If it's yours, we'll get it changed all right, said Harry Wharton.
Well, I don't mind telling pals like you fellows. It's a tip from my pater, explained Bunter. When you're a bear in a bear market, as he is, all you've got to do is sell shares you haven't got, and the oof rolls in oodles. So that tenner's a tip from your pater, is it? Asked Bob Cherry. Yes, that's it, yes. I wrote him a very special letter more than a week ago, as I told you. Well, he's coughed up a tip. Here you are, Wharton. You get it changed for me, old chap, now that I've told you where it came from.
Billy Bunter held out the £10 note to the captain of the remove. The famous 5 gazed at him. Bunter apparently supposed that all was plain sailing now. To judge by the looks of the co, it wasn't. There was silence in number 1 study as the famous 5 gazed at Bunter. That Bunter was not telling the truth was, of course, apparent to all. If Billy Bunter had come by that tenner honestly, he did not choose, for some mysterious reason, to explain precisely how. Bunter blinked impatiently at the staring faces.
Look here, are you going to get this changed for me? I'm going to stand a spread in this study when it's changed.
Where did you get it?
What, haven't I told you. Tenors ain't so jolly scarce at Bunter Court as they are at Wharton Lodge, I can tell you.
And how did it get here from your pater?
Eh? Well, in a letter, of course. You think it walked?
And when did the letter come?
I got it in the rack this morning, of course.
You never had a letter this morning?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, now I come to think of it, it wasn't in the rack this morning. You see, it was a registered letter.
So you had a registered letter. Did Quelch hand it to you?
Bunter hesitated. Eventually, Billy Bunter replied to Harry Wharton's question.
Well, yes. Yeah, of course, Wharton. The head sent for me to his study, you know, and said, "Here's a registered letter for you, Bunter." Those very words.
You've still got the registered envelope? Asked Harry.
Eh? Oh, yes. No, I chucked it into the waste paper basket in my study. Oh, what's the good of the envelope?
All clear, then, said Harry. I'll cut along to number 7 and get that registered envelope out of the waste paper basket, and that will settle it.
No, I mean, the fact is...
Bunter paused, evidently cudgelling his fat brain for a fact that would do.
I mean, I didn't chuck it into the waste paper basket in my study. What I meant was that I should have chucked it into the waste paper basket if I'd been in my study. Only I wasn't, see?
Oh, crumbs, said Bob.
I was in the rag. Yes, I remember now. I chucked the envelope into the fire.
There wasn't a fire in the rag today.
Oh, I mean into the grate. You keep on taking a fellow up, Cherry.
Then it's still there, said Bob. We'll rouse it out of the grate in the rag instead of the waste paper basket in study number 7.
Oh, I mean, I chucked it out of the window,
gasped Bunter. You fat fraud, you never had a registered letter, said the captain of the remove.
Oh, really, Wharton? I hope you can take my word.
I can take Quelch's at any rate. Do you mind if I ask Quelch whether you had a registered letter today?
Billy Bunter's plump jaw dropped.
Oh, crikey! No, don't you go saying anything to Quelch. Are you going to get this banknote changed for me, Wharton?
Not unless I know where it came from.
I've told you. And if you can't take a fellow's word, you can go and eat coke. So yah!
The study door banged behind Bunter and his banknote. Billy Bunter was peeved. His position was indeed enough to peeve anyone. Generally the most impecunious fellow at Greyfriars School, hoping against hope for the arrival of a postal order that never seemed to materialize, Bunter was now in possession of a tenner. Such a sum as was seldom seen in the lower fourth. And for all the use it was to him, he might as well have been tenner-less. Not a man in the remove would have given him so much as a threepenny bit for that tenner. "This won't do," said Coker. Coker of the Fifth spoke with emphasis. He generally did. Being a fellow who knew, and having no use for adverse opinions or arguments, Horace Coker naturally adopted a tone of finality. It was in break the following morning. Coker and Co. were in the quad. "Look at him," said Coker, with a nod in the direction of a fat figure and a fat face adorned with a big pair of spectacles. Potter and Green saw no reason whatever for looking at Billy Bunter. He was no ornament to the landscape, but it seemed that Horace James Coker was interested in the Owl of the Remove. Bunter, too, seemed interested in Coker. From a little distance he was blinking at the great man of the Fifth dubiously. As a matter of fact, Bunter was debating in his fat mind whether he would ask Coker of the Fifth to change that unchangeable tenner. "Look at him," repeated Coker. "It's going all round the school that Bunter's found the package of banknotes that was snooped from the head study. Everybody knows it, except the beaks," added Coker with sarcasm. "That sort of thing isn't good enough for Greyfriars. Bunter's going to hand that tenner over where it belongs." Horace Coker lifted his hand and beckoned to Bunter. Any other remove man, on beholding that beckoning hand, would probably have stared at Coker and walked off in another direction. Not so Bunter. Billy Bunter was only too glad of the chance to speak to Horace. This was the opening he wanted. Bunter rolled up promptly.
"I say, Coker, old chap,
he began eagerly. Coker stared at him. "I hear you've been trying to change a £10 note," said Coker.
Yes, old chap. I mean, old fellow. That is, yes, Coker. I say, will you change it for me?
"No," said Coker. "I won't change it for you, Bunter. That tenner isn't yours. You got it out of that lost packet."
I didn't,
yelled Bunter. "It's not much use saying you didn't when everybody knows you did. You're going to hand over that tenner at once, and I'm going to see that you do it," said Coker impressively. "I'm going to go with you now to your form master." Billy Bunter blinked at him, his eyes almost popping through his spectacles in wrath and alarm.
"Why, you beast! I'm not going to quelch, and you jolly well ain't going to make me. Can't you mind your own business, Coker?"
Coker dropped a large and a heavy hand on a fat shoulder.
"Ah! Let go!"
roared Bunter. "Budge!" snorted Coker, pulling at the fat shoulder.
"Shan't! Let go! Beast! Rescue! Rescue! I say, you fellows, rescue! I say, Injaroo! Let go, you swab! Yow, wow, wow!"
Hello, what's the row? Bob Cherry came up at a run, followed by his friends at the sight of a remove man wriggling and yelling in the grasp of Coker of the Fifth. "Chuck that, Coker!" rapped Harry Wharton. Coker gave the famous five a glare. "Get out of the way!" he snapped. "Come on, Bunter, you little fat scoundrel!"
"Let go! I say, you fellows, make him let go!"
"We'll make him let go fast enough," growled Johnny Bull. "Go it, you men! Clear off!" roared Coker. Billy Bunter wriggled in one large hand. Horace Coker swayed and staggered in 10 smaller but quite energetic hands. All the famous five grasped Coker to drag him away from Bunter. But Coker held on. "You cheeky little chicks, get out!" he gasped. Coker struggled. Coker was big and brawny. Even sixth form men treated Coker with tact. 1 or 2 or 3 of the juniors Coker could have scattered before him like chaff before the wind, but the 5 of them were too many for Coker. Coker at last had to let go his grip on the owl of the remove. "We're prefects," called out Vernon Smith. "Look out! Here comes Wingate!" gasped Bob. "Chuck it!" Wingate of the Sixth stared at 5 crimson and breathless juniors, at a fat owl gurgling for breath, and at Horace Coker spluttering. 50 fellows at least gathered round to look on. Wingate frowned. "Well, what's all this about?" "Ah!" Coker was wildly dishevelled. His collar hung by a single stud. His hair was like a mop. His rugged face was crimson. He gave the famous 5 a glare. Only the presence of a prefect restrained him from charging. "What are you ragging Coker for, you young ruffians?" demanded Wingate. "Only trying to persuade him to mind his own business," said Bob. "Well, chuck it," said Wingate, "or you'll get 6 all round. You chuck it too, Coker. You're a 5th form man. You ought to have more sense than to rag with juniors in the quad." "Who's ragging with juniors in the quad?" returned Coker. "I'm jolly well going to take Bunter to his beak. I'm going to make him hand over that tenner," vociferated Coker. "See? Everybody knows where he got it, and I'm going to make him cough it up."
"Oh, crikey!"
gasped Bunter. He was breathless, but he got into motion. Bunter did not want to discuss that tenner with a 6th form prefect. But it was too late. "Stop!" rapped Wingate.
"Oh, really, Wingate?"
"Now, what's this about a tenner?" asked the Greyfriars captain. "Have you got a tenner?"
"Oh, yes. I mean, no, yes. Yeah, yes,"
stuttered Bunter. "Everybody knows he's got it. Everybody knows where he got it," snorted Coker. "He's found the packet of money and pinched it." "Well, you can leave this to me, Coker," said Wingate. "Now, Bunter, if you've got a £10 note, where did you get it?" Billy Bunter blinked at the Greyfriars captain. The crowd of fellows gathered round the spot exchanged glances, some of them grinning. There was no choice for Bunter now. He had to explain about that banknote. A prefect was not to be denied. "Well," rapped Wingate.
I
stammered Bunter. Wingate's face grew grimmer. "Have you found that packet missing from the head study, Bunter?"
"Oh, no. I looked for it, Wingate, but I couldn't find it.
You fat ass, whispered Bob Cherry. You've got to own up now.
Oh, really, Cherry?
I'm waiting, Bunter, said Wingate. If you haven't found the packet, where did you get the £10 note? Bunter was plainly reluctant to state where that banknote had come from.
It's mine, Wingate.
Where did you get it? Rapped Wingate, so sharply that Bunter jumped.
A man gave it to me,
gasped Bunter.
What?
Almost roared the Greyfriars captain.
A man, he came up to me and he gave me the tenner, Wingate.
Bunter, you ass, said Bob. Bunter, you chump, said Harry Wharton.
I say, you fellows, it's true. I jolly well knew you wouldn't believe it, but it's true.
They all laughed in disbelief. That's rich even from Bunter, remarked Johnny Bull. Wingate was staring blankly at the fat owl. Bunter's remarkable statement seemed to have taken his breath away. That a man had come up to him and given him a £10 note was altogether too incredible. Has that young ass gone crackers or what? Said Wingate at last.
Oh, really, Wingate?
Where did you get that banknote?
I told you that man gave it me.
What man?
I don't know.
You don't know what man gave you a £10 note?
I mean, I've never seen him before.
A man you've never seen before gave you £10?
Yes!
The crowd of Greyfriars fellows stared at Bunter. Truth and Bunter had long been strangers, and swank was numbered among Bunter's charming qualities. But nobody, of course, believed for a moment that any beneficent stranger had done anything of the kind. Bunter had said that he knew they wouldn't believe it. He was right. They didn't. And where did this happen, and when, Bunter? Asked the Greyfriars captain, staring at the fat owl in sheer wonder.
It was yesterday afternoon, Wingate. I went out after class to look for that packet.
And found it, roared Coker.
I never found it,
roared back Bunter. Shut up, will you, Coker? Exclaimed Wingate impatiently. Get on with it, Bunter.
Well, I couldn't find the packet, and I got tired, and I sat on the cloister wall, and a man came up the lane beside the cloisters and said, "Is that Mr. Bunter?" So I said yes, and he said, "This £10 note is for you." And he gave it to me and walked away.
You didn't know the man, Bunter? Asked Wingate.
Well, I'd never seen him before.
Do you think that anybody could possibly believe that, Bunter? Said Wingate.
Well, I know it sounds a bit unusual,
stammered Bunter. Are you going to spin that yarn to Mr. Quelch?
I'd rather not mention it to Quelch. I think he mightn't believe it,
mumbled Bunter. I advise you, Bunter, when you see your form master, to tell him the truth. I'm going to report this to Mr. Quelch at once, and he will deal with you. Wingate walked away to the house, evidently to make his report to the remove master without loss of time. Harry Wharton and Co. gathered round Bunter. They were quite alarmed for him. The effect of such a yarn on Mr. Quelch was almost unthinkable.
"Bunter, old fat idiot," said Bob, "for goodness sake, cut in at once and hand that tenner to Quelch."
"Go to it," said Frank Nugent. "Look here, Bunter, we all know what a howling ass you are, and you fancy somehow you've only borrowed that tenner from the packet, but a beak will call it pinching." "It's the sack," said Johnny Bull.
I say that man really did give me the tenner," said Bunter.
"He did he?" snorted Johnny Bull. "Was that before it came in a registered letter from your pater?" "Ha, ha, ha!" Guffaws all round.
"Beast!"
Bunter rolled away. But he did not roll in the direction of Mr. Quelch's study. Friendly counsel seemed a sheer waste on Bunter, and the Removites could only wonder what was going to happen to him when he saw Quelch. There was a thrill of excitement when the bell clanged for third school, and the Remove went to their form room. The Remove fellows filed to their places in suppressed excitement. Peter Todd gave his fat study-mate a final whisper of warning as he went to his desk. "Own up, you fat ass."
"Beast!"
"Tell Quelch where you found the packet."
"I never found it."
"You benighted chump." Peter gave it up. Bunter, it seemed, was not to be saved from himself. Quelch's eyes fixed on Bunter. Never had they seemed so much like gimlets. They almost bored into the fat junior.
"Bunter,"
said Mr. Quelch in a deep voice.
Yes, sir,
mumbled Bunter.
"I have heard a most extraordinary report from a prefect, Wingate of the sixth form," said Mr. Quelch. "It appears, Bunter, that you are in possession of a Bank of England note for the sum of £10.
Oh, yes, sir,
groaned Bunter.
You are aware, Bunter, that a packet is supposed to be hidden somewhere about the school, containing a number of notes purloined from the headmaster's study. Among them, £10 notes.
Why, I've heard so, sir.
You have, I believe, joined with other boys in searching for that packet of banknotes, Bunter.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I thought the head might like me to find it for him, sir, if I could.
Have you found it, Bunter?
Peter Todd gave the fat owl an almost beseeching look, but the owl of the remove did not heed that beseeching look.
You have not found the packet, Bunter?
Asked Mr. Quelch.
No, sir.
Very well. You will now explain to me how a banknote for £10 came into your possession, Bunter.
Well, it's mine, sir.
I trust so. If the banknote is yours, Bunter, as I trust, I shall communicate with the relative who sent it to you and explain that junior boys at this school are not permitted to have such large sums of money. Was it a relative who sent you this banknote, Bunter?
Bunter did not reply at once. All eyes were on his fat face.
Answer me, Bunter.
Quelch rapped.
It wasn't a relative.
Then who was it?
A man, sir.
Faltered Bunter. Mr. Quelch held up his hand.
Wingate has informed me, Bunter, that you told him that a man with whom you were unacquainted gave you that banknote yesterday for nothing and without explanation. Is that what you are about to tell me?
Yes, sir.
Then you need say nothing. Bunter, I shall take you to your headmaster after third hour, and the matter will pass into Dr. Locke's hands. We shall now commence.
And the remove commenced, the subject dropping there and then, which was a sufficient indication of what Mr. Quelch thought of the story of a beneficent stranger with tenors to give away. Third hour was not a happy hour for Billy Bunter. Benevolent old gentleman as Dr. Locke undoubtedly was, no fellow really liked to be taken to his study to see him, Bunter least of all. The prospect of that interview with his headmaster seemed to weigh on Bunter. He gave no attention whatever to the lesson. He couldn't. Quelch did not, in fact, take any further notice of Billy Bunter's fat existence till the hour of dismissal came. Then he rapped out, Bunter?
Yes, sir.
I shall now take you to Dr. Locke.
In the lowest spirits, Billy Bunter followed Quelch to his headmaster's study. Dr. Locke raised his eyebrows as he listened to what Mr. Quelch had to tell him. Billy Bunter stood uneasily, shifting from one fat leg to the other, and from the other to the one. He gasped as Dr. Locke's eyes turned on him and fixed him with a penetrating gaze.
"Most extraordinary," said the head. "Most extraordinary."
There seems to me only one conclusion to be drawn, sir, said Mr. Quelch. Since the story has spread that the packet of banknotes is concealed somewhere about the school, there's been some excitement on the subject, and very many boys have searched for it, including Bunter. Bunter now has a £10 note for the possession of which he cannot account. I am reluctant, very reluctant, to believe that any boy in my form could be capable of filching.
I didn't,
gasped Bunter.
Of filching one of the banknotes, having found the packet, said Mr. Quelch. But,
said the head,
Bunter, sir, has told an absurd story to account for the banknote. He is, I am sorry to say, habitually untruthful, and for this reason I attach no importance to the story he has told. It is, in itself, incredible. But the matter is, of course, very simply put to the test by the reference to the number of the banknote.
Oh,
said the head. No doubt, sir, a list of the numbers of the missing banknote has been supplied to Inspector Grimes, continued Mr. Quelch. Mr. Twist naturally makes a note of such details. Bunter, snapped Mr. Quelch, place the banknote on the table.
It's mine, sir.
Place it on the table at once,
rapped Mr. Quelch with a look that made Bunter jump. Bunter's tattered wallet came into view, and the £10 note was extracted therefrom and laid on the headmaster's writing table. Billy Bunter's eyes and spectacles lingered on it.
The number, said Mr. Quelch, glancing at it, is 000222468, sir. If Mr. Twiss's list is available...
Dr. Locke coughed.
I'm afraid, Mr. Quelch, that the matter cannot be put to the test so simply as you have naturally supposed. It is, of course, Mr. Twiss's custom to note the numbers of all banknotes passing through his hands as my secretary, but it unfortunately happens that the list was placed in the same drawer as the money, and as it cannot be found, there can be no doubt that it was taken at the same time as the banknotes by the unknown pilferer.
Oh, said Mr. Quelch. Then it remains only to question Bunter, sir.
Quite so. Bunter, you will explain to me precisely how this banknote came into your possession.
Yes, sir,
groaned Bunter.
I warn you, Bunter, to tell your headmaster the truth, said Mr. Quelch.
I'm going to, sir. A man gave it to me, sir. I don't know who he was or why he did, but he did, sir.
Bless my soul,
said the head blankly.
That, sir, is the story Bunter told a prefect and repeated to me, said Mr. Quelch.
Bunter.
The head's voice was full of sorrow.
Tell me at once where you obtained that banknote.
On the cloister wall, sir.
What? Do you mean that the missing packet was concealed on the cloister wall, and that you found it there?
No, sir.
Then what do you mean?
I mean I was sitting on the cloister wall, sir, when that man came up in the lane.
What man?
The man who gave me the banknote, sir.
Who was he?
I don't know.
Bless my soul. Are you telling me, Bunter, that a man you do not know came up to you and gave you a banknote for £10?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Quelch's lips shut in a tight line. Dr. Locke gazed at Bunter as if the fat junior had hypnotized him. He turned to the remove master.
Well, this is extraordinary, Mr. Quelch,
he said.
Very, said Mr. Quelch.
Such a story is utterly incredible.
Utterly.
It is, I suppose, within the bounds of possibility, but...
Mr. Quelch made no rejoinder to that. It did not seem to him at all within the bounds of possibility.
You have nothing more to tell me, Bunter?
Asked the head, transferring his gaze once more to the hapless owl.
No, sir.
Dr. Locke gazed at Bunter. Mr. Quelch waited for Dr. Locke to speak. Bunter blinked uneasily at the head's puzzled, thoughtful face, then at the grim countenance of his form master. The head spoke at last.
Mr. Quelch, Bunter's story is so extraordinary as to seem quite incredible, but in so serious a matter, we must proceed with care. For the present, the boy may go.
You may go, Bunter, said Mr. Quelch.
Yes, sir. Can I take my banknote with me, sir?
Stammered Bunter.
What did you say, Bunter?
Quelch almost thundered.
Nothing, sir,
gasped Bunter. Dr. Locke picked up the £10 note.
I will take charge of this for the present, and retain it till the ownership is established.
He opened his pocket-book, folded the banknote, and placed it therein. Billy Bunter's dismayed gaze followed it as it disappeared. Mr. Quelch pointed to the door. A dismal owl rolled out of the head study. For a brief period, the owl of the Remove had been in possession of a £10 note. Unchangeable, it is true, but still a tenner. And now it was gone from his gaze, like a beautiful dream. Long and lugubrious was the fat countenance of William George Bunter. Bunter rolled into the house to take refuge in the rag. In the rag, a crowd of fellows stared at Bunter as he came in. He was still the cynosure of all eyes.
"Got any more tenors, Bunter?"
chuckled Skinner.
"No!"
howled Bunter. "What I can't make out is why the head hasn't sacked him already," remarked Vernon Smith. "He must know that Bunter knows where the packet is."
"There's no proof, Smithy,"
said Redwing mildly. The bounder gave a scoffing laugh.
"Do you believe Bunter's latest? You think a jolly old philanthropist is wandering about giving away tenors?"
Redwing made no reply to that. Really, it was not easy to believe. There was no comfort for Bunter in the rag. Mr. Grimes hardly breathed. It was nearly midnight, and all Greyfriars was sunk in silence and slumber. On the landing it was densely dark. Mr. Grimes could see nothing, but his ears were keen, and faintly, barely audible, he heard in the silence the sound of a softly opening door. Some of the Greyfriars fellows had heard that the Courtfield inspector was about the school again, but nobody certainly supposed or dreamed that Mr. Grimes was there now, still less that he was keeping silent and vigilant watch on the dark landing. But there was Mr. Grimes, noiseless, invisible, with red plump ears cocked to listen. A door had opened and closed again. Someone unseen had emerged, and with hardly the faintest sound was crossing to the stairs. Mr. Grimes's feet were of substantial size and weight, but in rubber shoes they made no sound at all. Certainly the unseen man who was stepping so stealthily down the stairs did not dream that a portly figure was behind him in the dark. On the lower landing there was a gleam of starlight from the big window. Black against the starlight was the silhouette of a man stopping at the window. For a full minute it stood there, silent, motionless, listening. Then came a faint creak. A casement was being opened. Outside was a faint stirring of the thick ivy that clustered round the window, tough old ivy, almost as old as Greyfriars itself. An arm was stretched from the window, and a hand was groping in the ivy. The hand came back with something in it. Then the tiny beam of a small torch was flashed on. Inspector Grimes, from the darkness, watched a strange sight. With a packet in one hand, the flashlight in the other, the stealthy man was peering through rimless pince-nez, examining the packet.
"Thank you, Mr. Twiss,"
said Inspector Grimes. The torch and the packet fell to the floor together. The man spun round with a startled squeal. A hand, plump but with a grip like steel, fastened on his shoulder.
"But, I
stammered Dr. Locke. The morning sunlight falling in at the study window showed his face clouded and troubled. In Inspector Grimes's plump, solid countenance, it revealed a quiet, stolid satisfaction. Mr. Grimes had got his man, which was naturally very satisfactory to Mr. Grimes.
"A shock to you, no doubt, sir,"
said Mr. Grimes.
"But it was to be expected when it turned out to be an inside job, sir."
"But, Mr. Twiss," murmured the head, "Mr. Twiss, he's not been long in my service, but...
"From information received, sir, my attention was directed to Mr. Twiss,"
said Inspector Grimes. Dr. Locke certainly did not guess or dream that information had been received from a Greyfriars Junior. Mr. Grimes had no intention of mentioning Herbert Vernon Smith.
"For that reason, sir, I asked you for a key, so that I could, when necessary, keep watch inside the house,"
said Mr. Grimes.
"I understand that, Mr. Grimes, But I do not understand why you should have expected the wretched man to visit the hiding-place of the packet last night, and thus fall into your hands."
Mr. Grimes smiled, a smile of satisfaction, almost fatuous self-satisfaction. Undoubtedly, Mr. Grimes was very pleased with himself.
"That, sir, was the outcome of measures I had taken. The man was led to believe that the packet had been discovered and a part of its contents abstracted by a schoolboy. Well, naturally, he was very much alarmed. Yesterday, the whole school, including Mr. Twiss, knew of this supposed discovery. One can imagine his feelings, his fear, and his anxiety. His impulse would be to revisit the hideout and ascertain whether the packet was safe, to examine it, and to remove it to yet another hiding-place if he found that it had been tampered with."
"Oh,
exclaimed the head.
"On a previous occasion, I have reason to believe he did actually change the hiding-place of the packet in fear of its discovery by some junior schoolboys, and this was done during morning school. Yesterday, however, he did not venture to act in the daytime, no doubt because he was aware that I was about the school. It was obviously safer to leave it till a late hour. This he did, and when he made his move, I was prepared for it."
I understand. But
The head looked perplexed.
now that the packet has been examined, it has been ascertained that only a number of £1 notes are missing from it.
25, sir, doubtless expended by the man on some of his miserable horse-racing speculations. The £10 banknotes are intact.
Then the banknote in the possession of the boy Bunter did not, after all, belong to the packet.
It did not, sir.
Oh, I'm glad of that, at least. It is a great relief. The story told by the boy to account for its possession was extraordinary, indeed incredible. Can it have been true?
Quite so, sir.
It is amazing. According to the boy, a stranger whom he'd never seen before sought him out and handed him a £10 note. And it was this extraordinary circumstance that gave the alarm to the pilferer and caused him to revisit the hiding-place of the packet and thus betray himself.
Well, the pilferer, sir, was no more likely to believe Bunter's strange story than anyone else. He, like all others, took it for granted that Bunter had discovered the packet and helped himself from it. That, sir, is why the stranger gave Bunter the £10 note, in order to give Mr. Twiss exactly that impression."
Mr. Grimes coughed.
I must explain, sir. The stranger who sought out Master Bunter and handed him the £10 note was a plain-clothes police officer acting under my instructions."
"Well, bless my soul!"
exclaimed the head.
"You'll realise, sir, that the pilferer's identity was unknown, that even had the lost packet been found and the money recovered, the pilferer would still have remained unknown. Still here, sir, with opportunities for repeating his action at another time. There was only one way to nail him, and that was by taking him in the very act of handling the packet he'd hidden. For this purpose, it was necessary to alarm him with the impression that the hiding-place of the packet had become known to another person."
"Oh, Mr. Grimes!"
"I have some acquaintance with Master Bunter, sir," continued the inspector stolidly, "and I did not doubt that a banknote in his possession would soon become known to everyone, and that it would be attributed to what would seem the only possible source, the hidden packet. The matter, in fact, worked out exactly as I'd anticipated."
Dr. Locke gazed fixedly at Mr. Grimes.
"Obviously, sir," continued Mr. Grimes, "the boy would not be able to change the banknote acquired in such dubious circumstances, and no harm would be done. Now that the matter has come to a satisfactory conclusion, it can, of course, be explained."
"Well, upon my word, then the banknote I have taken charge of is your property, Mr. Grimes?"
"Precisely, sir."
Mr. Grimes coughed again.
"But as it was given to the boy, and as he may be considered perhaps entitled to some reward for his unconscious and inadvertent assistance to the law—"
"Had you consulted me in the matter, Mr. Grimes, I could never have approved of this most extraordinary proceeding,"
said Dr. Locke. Mr. Grimes did not explain that was precisely why he hadn't consulted him in the matter.
"However," said the head.
"However,"
agreed Mr. Grimes,
"your banknote will be returned to you, Mr. Grimes, but in the circumstances I feel that the boy ought not to be the loser."
"Quite so, sir,"
agreed Mr. Grimes.
"Bunter."
It wasn't me, sir.
Mr. Quelch was addressing William George Bunter in form on Monday morning. Bunter blinked at him uneasily. What Quelch was going to say Bunter did not know, but he denied it provisionally, as it were. Quelch gave him a look.
"I was about to say, Bunter, that your headmaster desires to see you in his study after third school."
Oh, crikey!
moaned Bunter. Skinner winked at Snoop. The bounder shrugged his shoulders. Harry Wharton and Co. exchanged glances. All the remove took note of Quelch's words in one way or another. From those words they could draw only one conclusion, that the game was up for Billy Bunter. The lesson proceeded, Bunter sitting with a worried, fat face. Bunter did not want to pay that call on his headmaster. He dreaded it with a deep dread. In that worried frame of mind, Bunter was not likely to shine in class. He gave even less attention than usual to Quelch's valuable instruction. But Quelch was unusually patient with him that morning. Bunter rolled out in break with an expression on his fat face which indicated that all the troubles in the universe, and a few over, had landed on his plump shoulders.
I say, you fellows, you heard what Quelch said. I've got to go and see the beak after third school.
Bunter blinked dolorously at a crowd of more or less sympathetic faces.
I say, what do you think's up?
Your number, said Skinner.
Beast!
Groaned Bunter. You fat chump, said Peter Todd. Why didn't you take that packet to the head while there was time?
I keep on telling you that a man gave me that tenner, and that I never found the packet at all. And if I had, I'd no more have touched it than I'd touch a fellow's cake.
Oh, my hat. Ha, ha, ha. The fellows laughed.
A man came up and gave me that tenner while I was sitting on the cloister wall.
I say, let's all go and sit on the cloister wall, suggested Bob. Perhaps a man will come up and give us a tenner each.
'Tain't fair. The head would believe you if you told him. So would Quelch.
Bob looked hard at Bunter's worried, fat face. Quite a new idea coming into his mind. I wonder, is it possible, you men, that Bunter's told the truth, and that it did happen?
How could anything have happened if Bunter said it did?
Inquired Johnny Bull.
It's all Wharton's fault,
groaned Bunter.
Mine?
Exclaimed the captain of the Remove in astonishment. How is it my fault, you fat duffer?
I asked you to tell Quelch you saw that man give me the tenner. You jolly well know I did, said Bunter warmly.
Why, you...
gasped Wharton, while the other fellows yelled with laughter.
Blessed if I see anything to cackle at when a fellow's going up to the head. I say, Bob, old chap, you'll back up a pal if Wharton won't. You'll come with me to the head.
Bob Cherry stared blankly at the owl of the Remove. He seemed dumbfounded. Apparently taking silence for consent, Bunter rattled on eagerly.
Only, of course, we shall have to fix up what we're going to say. It doesn't matter what, really, so long as we say the same thing. You can't be too careful with a beak. You come with me to the head and say, no, get off, let go my neck.
Bob Cherry did not let go the fat neck. He shook and shook and shook again, and finally sat Bunter down on the hard, unsympathetic earth with a resounding bump. Then he stalked away, leaving the crowd of juniors yelling with merriment, and Billy Bunter yelling too, though not with merriment. Third school that morning was again not a happy hour for Billy Bunter. For the first time in his career, Bunter would have been glad had the lesson lasted longer. Every tick of the clock brought nearer that dreaded visit to the dreaded study. He would even have been glad to have been kept in when the hour was up. But Quelch, who sometimes kept him in for inattention or carelessness or laziness, did not seem to think of it on this particular morning. He merely glanced at Bunter when the remove were dismissed, and said,
"You will now go to your headmaster's study, Bunter."
"Yes, sir,"
groaned Bunter. He went out with the remove, but did not head for Dr. Locke's study. It seemed as if his fat little legs refused to carry him thither. He rolled out into the quad, after the famous 5.
"Go to the head, you fat ass," said Johnny Bull.
I ain't going,"
said Bunter, desperately.
I say, you think the head will forget about it if I don't go?"
"Fathead."
"Well, he might forget. He's rather an old donkey, you know. I jolly well ain't going. I say, you fellows, don't walk away while a chap's talking to you. Beasts!"
hooted Bunter at 5 departing backs. An angular figure appeared in the doorway of the house, looking out. Bunter could guess for whom Quelch was looking, and he made a strategic movement to screen himself behind Vernon Smith, who, heedless of Bunter, was speaking to Tom Redwing. "I hear that Twiss is gone, Reddy." "Oh, is he?" said Redwing. "Yes, and Grimy seems to be finished here. It looks to me—"
"I say, Smithy, keep in front of me," gasped Bunter. "I say, keep just in front, so that Quelch won't see me."
"Ha, ha, ha!" yelled the bounder. Keeping in front of Bunter would have left a considerable portion of that plump youth visible on either side of Smithy, though that circumstance did not seem to occur to the fat owl.
"Bunter?"
"Oh, dear. Yes, sir."
"Why have you not gone to your headmaster? Go at once,"
rapped Mr. Quelch. There was no help for it. In the lowest of spirits, Billy Bunter rolled into the house, and with reluctant feet trod the corridor to his headmaster's study. "Hello, hello, hello. Here he is, bunked, sacked, whopped. What's the jolly old verdict, Bunter?" Billy Bunter rolled out of the house. Scores of fellows stared at him as he reappeared. Dozens of voices hailed him. Bunter was grinning. He'd gone into the house looking as if he'd found life at Greyfriars barely worth living. In less than 10 minutes he came out again with a wide grin on his fat countenance, a grin so wide that it almost looked like meeting round the back of his neck. It was quite a startling change in Bunter. Certainly he did not look like a fellow who was bunked, or sacked, or whopped. He looked happy and glorious. He almost strutted into the quad, and the Greyfriars fellows stared at him in astonishment. "You've seen the head?" asked Harry Wharton, quite puzzled. Bunter nodded carelessly.
"Oh, yes, yes. I've seen the old boy."
"And what did he say?" demanded Bob.
"Oh, we had a chat,"
said Bunter. "You're not sacked?" exclaimed the bounder.
"Do I look sacked?"
"Or whopped?" asked Johnny Bull.
"Do I look whopped?"
asked Bunter derisively. "Oh, didn't the head want that packet?" demanded Vernon Smith. Cachinnated Bunter.
"No, he didn't want the packet, Smithy. You see, he's got it."
"What?" exclaimed a dozen fellows. Billy Bunter's grin became, if possible, wider still. "Has that packet been found, then?" exclaimed Bob Cherry.
"So the head said, and I suppose he knows. He told me that the packet has been found and that the banknotes in it were tacked."
"Intact, perhaps?" suggested Nugent.
"Intact, yes, that was it,"
agreed Bunter. "Is he pulling our leg or what?" asked Johnny Bull. "If the packet's been found with the banknotes intact, where did Bunter's banknote come from?"
"I told you where it came from,"
hooted Bunter.
"A man came up to me when I was sitting on the cloister wall."
"Gammon! Oh, don't tell us that one again," implored Skinner.
"You fellows never believed me,"
said Bunter, blinking reproachfully at the famous 5 through his big spectacles. "We jolly well didn't," agreed Bob.
"Well, the head takes my word, even if you fellows don't, and I believe he jolly well knows who the man was," said Bunter. "He said that he was now acquainted with all the circumstances." Well, that's the way he talks, of course, but he meant that he knew all about it, and he jolly well said that in the circumstances I could retain possession of the £10 note, which means that I can keep it.
What? Came a general gasp.
Yes, that's what he said, trilled Bunter. He said, that tenner's yours and you can stick to it, see?
Oh, my hat, gasped Bob. I can sort of hear the head saying that. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, not those exact words. Of course, he was long-winded. What he actually said was that, being acquainted with all the circumstances, he approved of my keeping the banknote. And I'm jolly well going to.
The juniors gazed at Bunter. It was clear from his looks that his interview with the head had gone off satisfactorily, but this was the limit. You mean to say you've got the banknote, then? Demanded Smithy.
Well, I haven't exactly got the banknote,
admitted Bunter. I fancied not, grinned Skinner. Well, why didn't the head hand it to you if he said you could keep it? Demanded half a dozen fellows.
Well, he would have, only...
Only, grinned Skinner.
Only I asked him to give me pound notes instead.
Oh.
And he jolly well did, said Bunter triumphantly. He said something about being careful in the expenditure of so much money.
In the what? Expenditure, perhaps, said Harry Wharton, laughing.
Well, I think the head said expenditure, said Bunter. He said it was a large sum for a junior to have. Anyhow, the head gave me the quids, and that's jolly well that.
Got 'em about you? Asked Skinner, still sceptical.
Look!
Chirruped Bunter. A fat hand went into a sticky pocket. It emerged with a wad of pound notes in it, a fragment of an ancient bullseye adhering to one of them.
What about that?
Trilled Bunter. It was the climax. Billy Bunter enjoyed that climax. But he did not linger. The tuck shop called, a call irresistible to Bunter. With that windfall in his sticky fingers, Bunter had no time to waste. He headed for the place where there were foodstuffs like a homing pigeon. Evidently, there was going to be a sticky end for Billy Bunter's banknote.
That was Martin Jarvis reading C.S.A. Word's fifth Billy Bunter book, Billy Bunter's Banknote, by Frank Richards. The other four in the Billy Bunter series are Billy Bunter of Greyfriars School, Billy Bunter's Postal Order, Billy Bunter and the Blue Mauritius, and Bunter Does His Best. They're all read by Martin Jarvis and can be obtained from your local stockist. You can also buy direct from CSA Word. The address is on the packaging with your recording. Or from CSA Word's website, www.csaword.co.uk. And thank you for listening.